Kitonga Murugara MP. 3, the Honorable David Boni Mwalika MP. 4, the Honorable Peter Kaluma MP. And 5, the Honorable Edith Nyense MP. Honorable members, it is advisable that in attempting to develop an agreed version of the bill, the committee confines itself to the contentious clauses of the bill. The committee is also reminded to be mindful of the guidance contained in my communication of 3rd of July 2019 with regard to the proposed amendments to Clause 2 of the bill. I thank you, honourable members.
The reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements in respect of the following constituencies for the year ended 30th June 2018 and the certificates therein: Aleko Usonga, Rarieda, Rangwe, and Suba South. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Chairperson, Justice and Legal Affairs Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, October 3rd, 2019. Report of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs on its consideration of the petition to remove the word Arambe from the coat of arms by Charles Koinange Mangwa. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, questions and statements.
First question by member for Mwatate, Honorable Mwandime.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question Question 429 of 2019. 1. Could the Cabinet Secretary explain the criteria used to identify and consequently gazette hardship areas and provide a list of such areas in Taita Taveta County, particularly Mwatate constituency? 2. Could the Cabinet Secretary also explain the discrepancies in the criteria exemplified by the fact that Kungu Primary School and Elijah Mzai Secondary School, both in Mwatate constituency, share the same compound, but only teachers in Elijah Mzai Secondary are paid hardship allowances? 3. Why were hardship allowances payment for teachers in Rongeward in Mwatate constituency stopped when Rongeward's educational administrative boundaries were transferred from Voi constituency to Mwatate constituency? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oral question referred to the Departmental Committee on Education and Research to call the Cabinet Secretary. Next question by the member for Baringo County, Honorable Gladwell Cheriot. Jesire. Next question by the member for Stare, Honorable Jaguar.
Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask question 438 of 2019, directed to Cabinet Secretary of Sports, Culture and Heritage. 1. Could the Cabinet Secretary explain the formula used by the Music Copyright Society of Kenya, MCSK, to arrive at a flat rate payout of 2,530 per performing artist as royalties, and A, submit a list of all the 13,967 artists alleged to have received the said royalties and confirm whether all of them are performing artists. B, give an account for Kenya shillings 118 million collected by MCSK from April to June 2019, and also for monies collected by MCSK between 2017 and 2019 when the Kenya Copyright Board, KECOBO, had suspended MCSK license. 2, could the Cabinet Secretary also A, state the actions taken by MCSK against broadcasters who have not been remitting royalties for local artists despite airing their content? B, explain why MCSK assets that were recently disposed of and how the proceeds from the said disposal were utilized. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. You know, under Article 95, Clause 1 of the Constitution, the National Assembly represents the people of the constituencies and other special interests. I think these are some of those special interests. Very well. Question will be responded to before the Committee on Sports, Culture, and Tourism. The next question is by the member for Teso South, the Honorable Geoffrey Omuse.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask question number 441 of 2019, directed to the Cabinet Secretary for Education. Roman 1, what measures have been put in place to ensure that all school buildings and other infrastructure in both private and public schools are safe for learners in view of the recent collapse of a classroom at Precious Talent Academy in Nairobi County? Roman 2, how much money was allocated for school infrastructure in the financial year 2017-2018 per constituency, indicating the institutions that received the said funding? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The royal question will be responded to before the Departmental Committee on Education and Research. For the second time, question number 437, member for Baringo County. You don't have a card? Oh no, members, please remember to carry your cards.
Sir, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Very well, proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. The question is, 1, what is the fate of Cabernet School for the Deaf and Blind in Baringo County, which is yet to reopen for the 3rd term in account of strike by subordinate staff who have not been paid their salaries for the last 15 months? What were the reasons behind the recent reduction of the government annual allocation to the school from 2.3 million to 416,000 shillings? Could the number 3, Mr. Speaker, sir, could the Cabinet Secretary consider restoring the original amount to 2.3 to the school and further consider reviewing this amount upwards on an account of the rising economic costs? Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
The question will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Education and Research. Next is statements. Is a request for a statement from the Honorable Barasa Didimas.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to request for a statement regarding status of unsafe buildings earmarked for demolition. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order number 44, 2 Section C, I wish to request for a statement from the Chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works, and Housing regarding the status of unsafe buildings. Honorable Speaker, in the recent past, we have had many lives lost due to collapse of buildings and other structures in this country due to poor workmanship, use of plans that are not approved, faulty designs, and use of substandard materials by the contractors. It is noted that the respective government agencies have earmarked such structures for demolition, but no follow-up is made to ensure that such weak or substandard buildings are demolished. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I seek a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Transport, Public Works and Housing on the following. 1, what is the number of buildings declared unsafe and therefore earmarked for demolition by the national government? 2, state the measures that the government has taken against the proprietors and owners of such buildings which have collapsed in the past and led to loss of lives, and what measures has been put in place to ensure that all buildings are safe and certified by the relevant authorities before occupancy. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Chair, Departmental Committee on Transport, how long do you think you need to respond to the question? Honorable Kosing.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker, and I thank also my colleague. Speaker, I think 2 weeks will be sufficient.
2 weeks?
That's big information, the whole country, including his constituency. 2 weeks, Honorable Speaker.
Very well, 2 weeks. Before we proceed, allow me to recognize the presence of pupils from the following institutions: Kongoni Primary School, Langata constituency, Nairobi County, and those from Marigo B Primary School, Subukia constituency, Nakuru County. They are welcome to observe the proceedings in the National Assembly this afternoon. Leader of the Majority Party.
Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 42, subsection 2A, I rise to give the following statement on behalf of the House Business Committee following its meeting held on Tuesday, October 1st, 2019. On Tuesday next week, the House Business Committee has scheduled the following bills for consideration in the Committee of the Whole House: the Circle Society Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 1 of 2018, and the Sectional Properties Bill, National Assembly Bill number 23 of 2019. The Speaker will also consider the following business, should we not conclude it today: the report of the Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on their mission, fact-finding mission on the welfare of migrant Kenyan workers in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And 2, the report of the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources on a petition by the Executive regarding the variation of the boundaries of Mount Elgon Forest Reserve. Honorable Speaker, also prioritized for second reading next week are the following bills. Should we not conclude them today: the petition to County Assembly's Procedure Bill, Senate Bill number 22 of 2018, and the County Government in bracket Revenue Raising Process Bill, National Assembly Bill number 24 of 2018. Mr. Speaker, in accordance with the provisions of Standing Order 42A, 5 and 6, subsection 5 and 6, I wish to convey that the following cabinet secretaries will appear before committees next week. And the first one is the Cabinet Secretary for Health, who will appear before the Committee on Health on Tuesday, October 8th, 2019, to answer the following questions from the following members: Honorable John Oro Oyoka, Honorable Florence Mutua, Honorable Dismas Wekesa, Honorable James Wamshukuru. Cabinet Secretary for Information, Communication and Technology will appear before the Committee on Information, Communication and Innovation. on Tuesday, October 8, to answer question from Honorable Joyce Korir. Cabinet Secretary for Environment and Forestry will appear before the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources on Tuesday, October 8th, to answer questions from the Honorable Yusuf Hassan of Kamkunji. And the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries will appear before the Committee on Agriculture and Livestock to answer questions from the Honorable Benjamin Washali, Wafula wa Munyinyi, and Honorable Ferdinand Wanyonyi. And the Cabinet Secretary for Lands will appear before the Committee on Lands on Tuesday, October 10th, from the following members: Honorable Catherine Waruguru, the Honorable Caleb Amisi, the Honorable Moses Kirima, and the Honorable Peter Kiara. And lastly, the Cabinet Secretary for Sports, Culture, and Heritage will appear before the Committee on Sports, Culture, and Tourism on Thursday, October 10th, to answer questions from the Honorable James Murgo. Mr. Speaker, I need your direction. There's a trend I'm seeing here. Either these chairs are not convening the meetings, or the cabinet secretaries are not coming to these meetings. Because I'm seeing a trend where I am reading the same questions for the same members every Thursday. So either the members are not coming to listen to their questions, or the chairs are not available and they are not convening the meeting, or the CSS are not complying with this standing order, they are not coming. Mr. Speaker, there's a de-link. And the purpose of these questions was members to represent their people. So, Mr. Speaker, I've seen chairs are not here. Some of them, majority, some of them are not here. Some of them. Because, like, Mr. Speaker, the questions for the Minister for Agriculture, I'm repeating Honorable Washali every day. The CS for Health, I don't know whether Honorable Sabina Chega is here. I'm repeating these questions. So, Mr. Speaker, I think there must be a communication back to the office of the clerk and my office every Tuesday, so that I can report to the House business how many ministers have appeared, and if a member does not come for his question, the question is dropped by the chair, and how many chairs do not convene. Because we don't want to read this thing for the sake of it. I can't be reading names here of members and telling them to come when either committee does not sit or a CS does not come. I mean, the House cannot act in vain, and Mr. Speaker, because if we go this way, the questions that are being filled this week then will be answered in June next year. Yeah, they'll be answered in June next year. So, Mr. Speaker, and I want the Speaker to be very firm, and I think we need to go. Chairs of committees and their vice chairs must be in the House from the beginning of the House at 2:30, at least up to 5, if you have no business. Every day you call a chair, he's not here. So if a chair, and we post this order paper on the website, if you know, and the chairs also through the liaison, we post the order paper on our WhatsApp group. If you know you're not available, make sure your vice chair is available. If your vice chair is not available, make sure a member of that committee is available. If it's a motion, he must move it. So, Mr. Speaker, I think this system of questions and answer, and the Deputy Speaker will agree with me, we did not introduce this thing just, for PR. We introduced for the public to see a member asking his question. And members, please, when you get the answer and you're happy, you can even post that answer on your Facebook for your voters to see. You post it on your Facebook, on your Twitter, that I have asked this question on your behalf, and this is what the answer is. I mean, you know, you have to be organized. So, Mr. Speaker, I think you need to give direction that we need to know who are these ministers who are not coming, who are these chairs who are not convening, and who are these members who don't come to ask their questions when the Cabinet Secretary and the committee is in session. So, Mr. Speaker, finally, the House Business Committee will reconvene on Tuesday, 8th October 2019, at the rise of the House to schedule business for the rest of the week. And Mr. Speaker, further, I think, in your communication, it's also very sad for a member of a committee to adopt a report and sign it, and then the same member wants to bring an amendment to the report that is he has adopted. And we don't want to see even a chair or a vice chair moving a report of his committee contrary to the recommendation. And as if you are moving in an amendment form. So, Mr. Speaker, I think the chair of Liaison, a very active chair. Every Wednesday we meet. So, Mr. Speaker, I think we need to make this question and answer session more proactive and more productive to the members and the general public. I now lay this statement on the table of the House.
Well, for the information of the chairpersons and their vices, in the event that a member does not show up during the time appointed for a member to ask their question, the tradition of the House is if there is no communication requesting for deferment, the question must be dropped. It must be dropped, just like you say in church. If there is nobody opposed to people being wedded, you must shut your beak forever. Keep your peace. So it's the same. So the tradition of the House is if you are, for one reason or other, not able to attend at the date appointed and time, please make a request for deferment or whatever other purposes you may wish to. But don't just be absent, because the question will be dropped. And you know the rules of the House, your peace will have to be kept for not less than 6 months. Yeah? For the cabinet secretaries, they must, if they are not able to attend for whatever reason, communicate their inability to attend in good time, so that also a member does not waste their time going to ask the question only for the cabinet secretary not to appear to answer. So the chairs, and we have seen that the chairs, you are a microcosm of the House. Just do the necessary. Those who fail to attend, deal with them. The Standing Orders, Powers and Privileges Act is there, so deal with them. You don't have to, you know, don't make it like it's a negotiation. So please, chairs, be firm. And where the chair is not present, the vice chair, please also, likewise, be firm in implementing the standing orders in that regard. There was overlooked the request for a statement by the Honorable Yusuf Hassan, member for Kamukunji. Honorable Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to the Standing Order number 442C, I wish to request for a joint statement from the Chairperson of the Department Committee on Land and the Chairperson of the Department Committee on Defense and Foreign Affairs on the encroachment of land by the Kenya Air Force and the resultant demolition of household structures. Honorable Speaker, over 20 structures in Kitui village of Pumwani Ward, Kamkunji constituency, were forcefully demolished without notice by a group of soldiers from the Moi Air Base in Isli on the 27th of September 2019, thereby depriving many Kamkunji residents of their daily livelihood and source of sustenance. Honorable Speaker, this unwarranted action by the Kenya Air Force has led to heightened tension in the affected areas of Kamkunji because the aforementioned soldiers threatened to return and carry out more demolitions. Honorable Speaker, the officially designated and gazetted Moi Air Force Complex in Air Base Ward occupies a landmass virtually the size of Kamkunji constituency itself, which makes Kamkunji the most densely populated constituency in Kenya, in view of the 350,000 people occupying an area less than 5 square kilometers in size. Honorable Speaker, the Moi Air Force Base has over the years encroached and irregularly expanded into Isli South Ward, into California Ward, and lately into Pumwani Ward, which has led to direct conflict with civilians, especially in view of the fact that Kitui village, where the demolitions took place, is more than a kilometer from the official Moi Air Force Base border. Honorable Speaker, in 2011, bulldozers were used to demolish houses in Kitui village, in Kiambiu, Isli Section 3, and Biafra, following which the Departmental Committee on Lands tabled a report in the House calling for immediate suspension of further demolitions and evictions in Kamkunji constituency, and making recommendations to the Ministry of Lands and the National Land Commission on how to address these challenges. Mr. Speaker, it is on the account of this perpetual encroachment of land by the Kenya Air Force and the demolition of structures that I seek a joint statement from the chairperson of the Department Committee on Lands and their chairperson of the Department Committee on Defense and Foreign Affairs in the following. Number one, has the government, through the Ministry of Lands and the National Land Commission, undertaken a comprehensive survey and a thorough audit to clearly determine the legal borders and limitations of the Moi Air Force Base in Isli? And if not, when will this urgent undertaking be conducted? Number two, what specific remedial interventions, including putting a stop to any further demolitions, pending the aforementioned survey, as well as the consideration of compensation and resettlement, is the Ministry of Defense pursuing in addressing the plight of Kamkunji constituency residents who have been displaced or evicted from their usual dwellings, or whose structures have been demolished as a result of the unwarranted expansion by the Kenyan Air Force? I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Well, I don't want to get into the definition of which one is which. I think the matter was went to court, I think, at some point in the past. And I think a resolution to the matter was made. So, Honorable Hassan, I'm at difficulties as to, because I thought maybe you could have actually separated. Now, because the Committee on Lands is going to deal with the specific issues of demarcation and what comprehensive survey. But the other aspect will be defense and foreign relations. Now, they are likely, this is likely to take quite some time, because for you to get the kind of comprehensive answer that I think your statement requires, there needs to be some coordination between the two committees, or indeed between the two ministries or departments that are involved. So I don't know whether part of the question should go to the Defense Committee or all of it. and then the whole of it or part thereof to the Committee on Lands.
There are two elements to this query. One is the demarcation of the land to ensure that we end civilian military hostilities or conflicts in that neighborhood. The second element is the fact that many people have had their structures, their properties demolished, and there has been no compensation or redress to those communities who have been affected. And these communities, Mr. Speaker, are some of them suffering, weak, and low-income members of our community who cannot afford. So the second element of my query is how could the issue of the people who have been affected by the demolitions can be compensated. And I think that's where the Ministry of Defense and the Committee for Defense and Foreign Affairs comes into this.
And you serve in that committee. You sit in that committee, Honorable Hassan.
Indeed. And I had actually raised this issue in the committee myself, and they had recommended that I should also raise it with the ministry, the Committee for Lands.
Very well. I think the question, the statement, the request will be forwarded to both the ministries, because in any event, it is really not the chair who is going to, because this is a request for a statement. So the answer, the real answers will come from the people, the ministries, where the information you are seeking is reposed, which would be, with regard to the issue of land, the Ministry of Lands or the National Land Commission. The other issues about compensation and the rest, the Ministry of Defense. But I see a colleague of yours in the committee wishes to maybe perhaps provide a response. Honorable Raso.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't rise in any way to have a point of order on the same. But I think the issue Honorable Yusuf has raised requires solution, not just a statement. Because as you have said, that issue was in court, and there was some arbitration which was done. And both sides are saying, you have encroached on my land, both the civilian side and the military side. And like you have rightly guided, both the Committee of Defense and Lands, they need to sit together because this thing requires a lasting solution. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Very well. I see there is an intervention from the Honorable Nyikal. Is that an intervention?
Mr. Speaker, I wanted to comment on the issue of chairs of committees that you didn't notice it then. I don't know whether I could still do that now.
Proceed.
Mr. Speaker, in the business of Parliament, in my own consideration, the most important part of our work is the committee work. As you yourselves have said before, when we are in plenary, it is most often a show. When we are in the committees, we do the actual work of the assembly. And Mr. Speaker, it is not only once that now we have heard that there are problems with the committees. You yourselves have often pointed out that chairs of the committees are not in the House when they are expected to be in the House, nor are their vices there. And Mr. Speaker, this actually results in weakness of the performance of this assembly. Mr. Speaker, even when we are dealing with bills, the most important contribution comes from the members of the committee when they are looking at the committee, when we are discussing the committee in the second reading. And if these committees are not working, then the direction and the guidance that the members of the committee give when we are discussing these important bills actually, as we have often noted, is not there. When we come to the third sitting to the committee of the whole House, Mr. Speaker, you have often noticed we are actually very few. And if we do not have the report of the committees, actually we are not doing much. So, Mr. Speaker, you have expressed this. The leader of the majority has expressed this. Both of you are in the liaison committee. I think, Mr. Speaker, more serious action needs to be taken, not only on the chairs, but also on the members, so that we stick to the regulations that say you have to spend, you have to be there at least so many times, so that if you miss such a number of times, action is taken. Mr. Speaker, this is something that we also have noticed. And therefore, it probably may be wise to have a standing orders that read that at no time should both the chair and the vice chair of the committees should be away, so that at any time we know there is proper leadership of the committee. There is no unit of this assembly, in my view, that does as much work as the committees. But, Mr. Speaker, something has also appeared. Many times when the committees make recommendations, either the implementation committee or the ministry that are involved do not take this seriously. And then it looks like the committees are actually meeting for no purpose or without any effect. And we have even had reports here occasionally of the chair saying, like when we are in the budget process, that even the recommendations of the committees are sometimes ignored. Mr. Speaker, if we kill the committees, then the assembly, parliament will actually not do its function. So, Mr. Speaker, my view is that in the liaison committee and all the other areas, serious action be taken and the committees be made to perform their work as is expected. Mr. Speaker, that is what I wanted to express.
This is not a debate. Now you want, unfortunately, Honorable Atandi, I want to encourage you to, again, look through the standing orders. This he was on a point of order. So I don't know, you think there's some debate? Honorable Atandi, I can see there's something that is burning. Please.
Thank you.
Don't burn it, don't extinguish.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I wanted to comment on the issue that was raised by the majority leader on the appearance of cabinet secretaries to committees. And Mr. Speaker, this is something which I wanted you to maybe comment on. There's a trend where these people called chief administrative officers, they are the ones who come before our committees, Mr. Speaker, on behalf of ministers, on behalf of cabinet secretaries. And Honorable Speaker, in my view, these people are strangers to Parliament because Parliament does not know them. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, when they appear before us, they don't have overriding authority to speak for ministers. Most of the time, they cannot commit the cabinet secretaries on issues that are raised. And the experience we have, Honorable Speaker, is that there has been back and forth where they didn't have specific answers. They have to go back and bring. Honorable Speaker, during budget making, our committee had to send away some of these people because they could not give us facts. So, Honorable Speaker, what I wanted you to give us a ruling on is whether these people are legally appearing before Parliament, especially on issues to do with budget, questions raised by members, because some of these questions require commitment by government, and the people who can commit on behalf of ministries are cabinet secretaries or principal secretaries, but not these people who are not approved by Parliament. So, Honorable Speaker, this is the issue I wanted to, because it's affecting the performance of committees. And so I think we need to agree as Parliament that these people can be appearing before us, and if they are to appear before us, do they have power to commit government on the issues that are raised by members? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Well, I think, Honorable Atandi, anybody appearing on behalf of a cabinet secretary, I think the first question that he or she should be asked is whether they have full authority to commit the ministry. So that if they appear not to have such authority, then you throw them away. You have no business listening to a person who is not going to commit, because the reason why we created the Committee on Implementation is to follow up on undertakings by government. When the House has recommended in a particular way, or when a cabinet secretary or any other government official appears before a committee and commits, it must be taken that then that is what the ministry stands for. And there should be a follow-up mechanism. Should be so that if a person appears and makes some commitments, then that should be taken to the Committee on Implementation to follow up. It's just assumed that if the ministry sends whomever it sends, you call what? You call them CAS. CAS, not like the CAS FM. If they appear, they must be asked whether they have full authority to make commitments on behalf of the ministries that they purport to represent or appear to represent. So that if they don't have, if they answer in the negative, then you have no business. The committee cannot engage with people who are not capable of committing themselves. Because if they make commitments, then there can be a follow-up. And if it is not, if what they have committed to is not done, then there could be sanctions. That's the way it should be. So indeed, that's why I think we should encourage the chairpersons of committees. Please be firm. Be firm when dealing with whomever it is that appears before you. I can see there is also a request for, is a point of order by the member for Ainabkoi.
Speaker, I want to say, and I want to ask our leader of majority, that chairmen and vice chairmen and members are present. It's only cabinet secretaries who don't appear. A follow-up mechanism must be established and structured communication must be established. Otherwise, leader, I want you to listen, leader. Leader, I've said, Honorable Speaker, because he's not listening to me, Honorable Speaker. Leader, you are a great man. But I want you to establish a firm and a strong follow-up mechanism and a structured communication of making sure that cabinet secretaries appear before us. After all, we are the Haggast House. Article 95 of our Constitution. We are great. When it comes to operational arm of government, we are number one. So, leader, at the same time, I must tell you, because you are the leader, I want all of us, wherever we are, to talk harmony, cohesive, and we live in harmony. And I subscribe to Article 131E, that President Uhuru Kenyatta, who happens to be the Commander-in-Chief of Kenya Defense Forces, the 5-star general, Article 131 is the symbol of national unity. So, leader, you particularly be talking about peace, be talking about love, but no talk in public that we must sack Professor George Makoa, who happens to be a top-notch. Anyway, yes, because we are one government, then how comes we are fighting the same government?
What is your point of order?
So I want us to tolerate each other. Speaker, thank you. I want us to tolerate each other.
Now, Honorable Chepkut, you rose on a point of order. You started off by saying that members are usually present, but cabinet secretaries are not the ones who are not present. But he now went on and brought in the issue of the 5-star. Anyway, honourable members, I'm aware myself that at the normal briefings that I do every Tuesday, I'm aware which committee sits when and which cabinet secretaries either have requested to be excused not to attend. But I think what the leader of majority requested also is important, that that report also be submitted to his office for purposes of informing the House Business Committee when it later sits, so as to know, even as we prioritize business, we know that a committee, ABC, will be meeting on another date other than a Tuesday, because that I've noticed that there's that trend, which is okay, which should be encouraged. If a cabinet secretary is not able to appear on a Tuesday and makes a request, and the committee is convinced, you can choose any other date and time to sit to receive the responses, because it is important that those responses to members' questions are given. The questions are not asked for purposes of bonga points. I think it is in fulfillment, as Honorable Chepkut says, of the requirement or the functions of a member under Article 95. Member for, sorry, I needed to also just correct the Honorable Nyikal that I do not sit in the liaison committee. But it is well, it's a committee that has been very, very active in this 12th Parliament, and they are doing well. And I would want to encourage all the members, the chairs of all committees, to make sure that they attend those meetings, because it is there, the liaison, the decisions of the liaison are weighty, and they inform how the House will conduct its business. Member from where?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would also want to comment on the concerns of the leader of the House, and as well as the comments by Honorable Nyikao, Mr. Speaker. I think it is true that at times we are also observing that we need to do more, especially on the committees. But the solution lies on the leader of majority and the rest of the House leadership. Mr. Speaker, the leader of the majority is aware that we have some members here who are members of more than three committees, and others who have only one committee, Mr. Speaker. For them to attend 3 committees in one day, it's almost impossible. We are also aware that there are some deputies or committee leaders who also are members of other committees, Mr. Speaker. And that's why they will not be able to concentrate on their own committees. There was a commitment in this House at the beginning, Mr. Speaker, through the leader of majority, that there will be no person with more than 3 committees, and House leaders will not be members of other committees, so that other members can have at least 2 committees. This has not happened. And this is why we have this problem, Mr. Speaker, and so the leader of majority has everything to blame on this, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
But even as I give the leader of majority an opportunity to respond, just to point out that there are some housekeeping committees, some of which, and you may see members in those committees, and then, for instance, I'm sure there are members of this House from both sides who are members of the Committee on Appointments Committee, chaired by the Speaker. You know how many times that committee sits. You also have members who belong to the Committee on Selection, which is chaired by the leader of the majority party. Why would people be having one? You also know that the Committee on Rules, Procedure and House Rules is also a Committee on Powers and Privileges. There are some committees that you may see a member's name and you think that he or she is in too many committees. But if you really check, if you just saying that so-and-so, Honorable so-and-so is a member of the selection committee or member of the committee on appointments, remove him from another committee, you actually almost making that member not participate in committee work. So what needs to be done, Honorable Kabinga, is you should strike a fair balance so that membership into some of those committees is understood. Because when you see a member who is in, like I know, I chair the committee on privileges. I know the members of that committee have been complaining that the committee doesn't sit. But you see, when members don't misbehave, the committee has no work. No? So when members behave so well, the committee on privileges doesn't have a lot of work, so that the committee can also have some work. You know? Committee on, I've just, that's the first one I spoke about, the committee on appointments. Of course, you know, House Business Committee. House Business Committee. You know, there are some members who are automatic. So, and then the others, that committee only meets once a week at the rise of the House. When usually, but as we transact business, I'm always able to tell that the majority of you are in the members' refreshment area, enjoying yourselves. So that committee also gives some sacrifice. It meets only once in a week. So, you know, it's need to, even as I agree with you, Honorable Kabinga, nobody should be in too many committees, but they must be committees that deal with really a lot of the business that comes here. Say, matters to do with departmental committees. There are some other select committees which are also very, very busy. Committee on implementation, as far as I'm concerned, should be a very busy committee. The committee on delegated legislation, that committee can actually, of its own motion, go through various laws, pick regulations that have been made, and even propose amendments to them. So it's again supposed to be a very busy committee. Those are, I mean, there are some select committees which are also quite busy. So the Honorable Kabinga, I hear you, and I'm sure the leader of majority perhaps will want to address that, as well as the leader of the minority party. Honorable Duale.
Speaker, what Honorable Kabinga said is something that's under discussion, but there are about 5 committees that even if you're a member, and I am one of them, I am the chair of selection committee. My members are asking me every day, why are we not going on a trip? There's a selection committee, there's a House Business Committee, there's a committee of appointment. Unless the president appoints a CS, we will not sit. There's a committee on powers and privilege. There's a committee on pension. So there are about 6 committees, and those members who are in those committees cannot be accused of being in 3 committees or 2 committees. But more fundamentally, Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy this afternoon, if you allow me, and this is a function of the whips, it's not the function of the leader of majority. Next week, I am going to comply with the standing orders and table before this House the attendance register of committees by members. Yeah. I am going to. In every committee of 19, I can tell you not less than 9 members are committed. Yeah. And the chairs will agree with me. Yeah. And they only go there when they want to go on a trip. Yes. You know, you cannot have the cake and eat it. You cannot accuse me of not putting you in a committee when you will not attend it. So, Mr. Speaker, with your permission, the director of committees, through the liaison, has tabulated. And it, you know what, sometimes we want to help you. So next week, Mr. Speaker, even this culture, I have seen a number of times. People come in, they function to the key in, and it goes back from there. It's very shameful. Some of us sit here from 2:30 to 7. We are not paid more than those who don't come. And when there's a trip, when there's a trip, chairs are intimidated that they will be removed if their names are not there. Those members are very good in signature correction. They don't attend committees, but they are good in signing for vote of no confidence. So now that you have checked the gourd, I'm going to pour it. I'm going to pour it. And on Tuesday, I'll present before the House Business Committee. And on Wednesday, I'll present before the Liaison Committee. And on Thursday, I will table. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Absolutely, absolutely. We need to see that report. Honourable members, no, before I'll give you an opportunity. Honourable members, we want to see the report on attendance in committees. If for whatever reason I'm not able to be in the chamber myself, my deputy is always aware, and the entire presidium. So, similarly, even in committees, if members don't attend meetings, really you are not giving value to the country, or even helping the committee. I can single out quite a number of you whom I know are always here up to 7. Eh? Not least, of course, the surgeon and Dr. Nyikal. At least I can pick those two without with no problem. I know you will always get them in the chamber. I know. I know. I just gave 2 examples. And of course, the member for Funyula. I know. Of course. If the Honorable Amalo is not dealing with party matters, he's always in the chamber. I know that. Of course. Now I can see. Please, let's not. I don't want the leader of majority to be accused of any rigging. This report, but let me tell you, the report is there. It has been. The director of committees keeps those reports, those records. I have raised this issue in the past, that indeed, please don't take photographs in the chamber. Member for Laikipia, don't take photographs in the chamber. You know, even if that selfie you are taking with yourself and the member for Nyandarua, or you wanted to show the country that you are in the chamber. You know, that's on a light note. But honourable members, I have raised this issue because I've been shown the report on attendances. And if you want to see, you see, like the Honourable Limo tables a report of the Committee on Finance. You can tell how many members of his committee have been following the debate on the bill. And the committee has got 19 members or 17. One would expect that indeed, about 15 members are going to contribute, because now, through committee you have received feedback from the stakeholders, from the public, so you have a lot of material. But you leave it to the chairs. I think it's not very good. So let us get this report. Let the report, it will be brought to us, because I know I've seen it myself, so that the House will resolve those that have missed attending their committees more than 3 times, be removed from those committees, and others be given the opportunity to serve in those committees. Yes. Wait, let us get the report. Let us get the report before we put the question. I can see there's a number of people want to comment, to weigh in on that, but it is not the debate, but Honorable Ntoimaga.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, I think I agree with what you are saying, and also the majority that are saying. But, Mr. Speaker, at the onset, at the beginning of this parliament, committees were formed and members are told, please prefer, make a preference. Bring your CV. And just a moment, please, I'm the one talking. And so that that CV can guide the leadership of the House to locate you to a committee that you can effectively and committedly you can contribute well. But unfortunately, in the beginning of this parliament, some of us were put in committees that we have no idea about. The ones we chose were denied that. So some of these things can actually discourage members from being committed to a committee. And that's a bit unfair.
Honorable Etoimaga, I'm not giving you an answer, but I'm aware that even when people go for an interview, all of them will say that we have all been to some university. But if the organization requires only 2, and 15 of you have applied, only the best 2 will be taken. Of course, I do know that there is also the need to give diversity. So you don't accuse the leadership. I know they consider that. People, the people who wanted to be in, maybe, I saw the list. Those who wanted to be in a Committee on Administration and National Security, there were more than 50. Transport and more than 100. Energy was overflowing. Defense and foreign relations, So surely the leadership, the leader majority, the leader minority, the whips, their deputies, they have to use some criteria to place members. And I don't think whether you should feel bad if you are placed in another committee, in another departmental committee. Because if everybody says that if every doctor comes here and applies to be members of the health committee, then it's not possible. The Honorable Pukose, who is a surgeon, serves in the very effectively in the Committee on Energy, where he is the vice chair. In the last parliament, he was in health. He was equally good, just as he is in energy, because he is a member of parliament, first and foremost, before he becomes a member of a committee. So let's agree that we are all members of parliament, and therefore you can serve in any committee. Where you are placed, please give your best. Give your best. I did not expect the Honorable Rachel Nyamai and the Honorable Mwashatan to do the kind of work that I have seen them do in these last 2 years, leading the lands committee. It's been impressive. Yeah? So honorable members, I think let's not complain that, I was not placed where I applied, because that's where I would have given my best. Remember, you represent the people who are not necessarily members of your background in terms of training, profession, occupation, and et cetera, et cetera. But you represent all of them. So in the House,
only one who can manage. For instance, Ichungwa is not the chair of budget because he's the only one who can manage. But even those members have capacities, but it's because that we must have one person who, at that particular time, should actually do that job. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, the statements given by the leader, if we continue like that, and though they elicited a lot of excitement from members, I'm sure I'm one of the members who is not doing very badly in terms of attendance. But the kind of list you'll be tabling, we must have some scrutiny, because you heard Honorable Chepkut accuse him of not preaching peace, harmony, and other things that were good. So if you allow him just to table a list, it has an effect also on the honorable members in this House, and therefore I would advise and ask that you bring some advisory on how that list can be scrutinized before it's tabled. Thank you.
Fortunately, the list is not made by the leader of majority. It is with the director of committees, who is an officer, a staff member. And I have seen it myself. It is not made by the the House leadership, it is made by our own staffers, because the people who clerk committees keep those records. They report to the director of committees. She keeps the record herself. So it is not something that anybody is cooking. The director of committees has no reason to go and mark the Honorable Omboko Milemba as having been absent. And I know it. The Honorable Milemba, ordinarily you are always present, both as a member of this House and also as a member particularly of Labor Committee. You may, even as a chair, have issues to do with your constituency and not be available on a particular date. If you are not there, kindly inform your vice. If the vice also is not available, inform one of the members and tell whoever is the clerk of your committee, please, let the meeting not abort on account of my inability to be present as well as that of my vice. Please inform the members to select or elect or appoint one of themselves to chair the proceedings, and you proceed. So I think, Honorable Omboko, yes, it's a good point, but I think the standing orders it is just the practice. Just as we've been talking about implementation of various laws that we pass here. Even we ourselves here should begin by that example, that we are not present, somebody else should be able to.
Anti-Corruption Academy as an international organization.
Honourable members, this motion was moved yesterday, and a total of 9 members have spoken to it. And for avoidance of doubt, I read their names: the mover, the Honorable Cheptumo; seconder, the Honorable George Utonga Murugara. Question was proposed, the Honorable Professor Duor, the Honorable Mohammed Sheikh, the Honorable Oudo Jiambo, the Honorable Rosa Boyu, the Honorable Martin Owino, the Honorable David Sankok, the Honorable Akinyi Obara have spoken. So any other member, those who spoke can also listen. I'm sure others listened to you as you contributed. I see the first on the list is the member for Dagoretti South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to say that I do support the ratification of this agreement for the establishment of the International Anti-Corruption Academy as an international organization. Mr. Speaker, we all know that this is at a critical time in our history when we need to address the issue of morality, our issues of ethics, our issues of purity, of morals, and even how we conduct our business as a country. Mr. Speaker, in my supporting of this ratification of the formation of an anti-corruption academy, I have something that I think would be a good build to what is already happening. And my build is that as a country we have made quite a number of efforts in this thing that we call anti-corruption. And the fruits that our efforts are bearing are out there for everyone to see. The good book reminds me that they shall be known for their fruits. For the many years that we have been forming commissions and authorities, we have ourselves to prove what it is that we have gotten out of all these organizations. Mr. Speaker, I do believe that what we aim to do with this formation of an academy is to look for a way to find a more ethical way of conducting business and to instill these at the earliest stage possible, and hence the need for this academy. Mr. Speaker, I would like to say that to my mind, I would agree with the thoughts of a very intelligent lady by the name of Mother Teresa, who said that whatever it is that you resist, that shall persist. And I believe the reason why our efforts on anti-corruption are not bearing any fruits is because we have been resisting more than aligning ourselves with what we want. We have been resisting what we do not want, as opposed today, there is a new drive to slay this dragon that has been known to kill not only our society, but go straight to the fabric of what holds us together as a nation. Corruption in itself does not only deny us our dignity, it also is a big threat to peace. Because when we have dirty money showing its way or finding its way to the borders of this country, then we end up in a situation where we are prone to attacks by the very people who are streaming in this money with ill intent. So, Mr. Speaker, how we address the issue of corruption is going to be more critical as we go ahead in a new world that is facing new problems, and top of them being the issue of terrorism. So, Mr. Speaker, my small bill, as we go into the establishment of an international anti-corruption academy, is to call upon ourselves as a society to have a new thought that sets us apart from what we have been in the past, and we should weigh the successes of what our efforts have been in the past, and then see if that is the way we want to keep going, or whether we can now set ourselves on a new trajectory. Mr. Speaker, I do support, and thank you very much.
Next on the list is Dhuku Kwenya.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to speak on this report. And I want to support the same and say that as much as we want to establish an anti-corruption academy that is international in nature, we must address ourselves and to the causes and the reasons as to why corruption has become an international threat, just like organized groups that are a threat to national security. But on the same breath, as the speaker before me have just ably put it, we are putting a lot of energy on corruption, and that gives us negative energy, and maybe the impact may not be as much. Because what we should be addressing, what is this corruption that we keep on talking about? What comes into our mind first? Because if you're not able to address that from the word go, we'll never get it right, and we'll never slay this dragon called corruption. We must talk of ethics, because that is where it starts. An establishment of a national or international academy in nature may not be the solution, because from where I sit, I envisage a situation whereby the attendees of training such academies will be top-notch government officers, so that then once they occupy offices, they do what they're supposed to do, devoid of corruption. But now this has to be inculcated in our society from young age, because corruption starts maybe close to when a child gets realization of who they are. And by and by, they grow up knowing that there must be an exchange for anything that they do, because corruption involves so many, it's multifaceted. It could be bribery, it could be white-collar theft, it could be anything that is seen to be of corrupt morals. So then the only way we can deal with this is maybe having a curriculum that is kind of geared towards building good morals in our children, so that then even as they grow up, they will know how to behave, instead of having a situation whereby we have so many don'ts. Don'ts will not help this country, but instilling good morals in our young children, in the teachers that teach these children, that is the only way to go. And therefore, as we support an academy that is going to be of international standing, because corruption is becoming an international menace, then we must address ourselves as a country and start thinking of ways and means of dealing with this monster. Because like a country like Kenya, whereby our business is arresting, taking people to court, charging them, taking them through the judicial process, without really addressing why is it that we having this kind of a challenge over and over again. Everybody who is occupying a public office, their business is one, to get there quick or get rich quick. And that mentality we must ask ourselves, where did the rain start beating us, so that then we can address ourselves from where we are coming from. Because no amount of top bottom initiative will solve the menace that we are in. Our current predicament is as a result of so many things. We celebrate people who have stolen, who have amassed wealth in corrupt means. We give them positions. We adore them and make sure and make them feel like they're heroes. And therefore, our children look up to such, and they feel that the best way to get rich is by practicing financial impropriety, is by being unfaithful, is just stealing, and we see as if it's a very good thing. Therefore, as much as we would want to think that having an international academy that is dealing with issues to do with corruption, I mean to teach people issues to do with corruption, it will be a song that will be losing taste, because we've had this over and over again. But we don't seem to be overcoming. And that is why I keep repeating, and I will say it again, that the only way to go back and I mean to win this war and to make sure that we have a society that is above reproach is by going back to the basics, from birth to the kindergarten, to the primary school, to high school, to university. We must teach ethics, and that is the only way to go. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I wish to support and say that the same maybe should not just be national, it should be cascaded down to constituencies, and maybe later to our locations, and every school should have a curriculum whereby ethics, where we teach ethics, so that then we can slay this dragon. And with those few remarks, I wish to support.
Member for Emuhaya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. On the onset, let me say that this is a very good motion to establish a national anti-corruption school. But Honorable Speaker, as we establish this school, we are actually relating it to what is existing as the International Corruption Academy. And yesterday, I was able to try and find out where is our National Anti-Corruption Academy. And I was unable to locate it where it is, despite the fact that the mover did talk about it. So, as we speak about this motion, yes, it is a good motion in terms of dealing with corruption. What kind of image did we give as we pass all those names? And we could look at ourselves. That's what the Kenyans want to see. So for me, I want to see a more proactive, action-oriented steps dealing with corruption than just establishing a school, which could also be another circus of a corrupt move. And therefore, I don't support the motion. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Member for Ainabkoi.
Honorable Speaker, I thank you. This is indeed a great motion. In the ratification of the instruments of establishing International Anti-Corruption Academy as an international organization is key. Therefore, the ratification and the agreement in section 12 of the treaty-making process of 2012, Kenya happens to be a member. Therefore, I'm happy that the cabinet approved. We are now debating, and we shall approve. After approving, we shall establish a national anti-corruption academy in our country. After establishing, we have 47 counties in our nation. The 47 counties shall establish counties anti-corruption academies. Actually, Honorable Speaker, since you are a senior counsel at the same time Speaker of a National Assembly, both 11th and 12th, you've earned leadership. And I just want to humbly request our leaders, starting from His Excellency the President, Deputy Cabinet Secretaries, and all state officers in the Republic, including members of Parliament, that leadership is indeed a calling from God to serve humanity with honor, with integrity, with fairness and just, as opposed to personal creed and sycophant. Therefore, Speaker, personally I support and I want the operational arm of government. This includes the top-notch Major General of National Intelligence Service, Inspector General of Police, who happens to be one of the arms of government, and anti-corruption and DPP, that we want a coordinated approach, and it is the National Anti-Corruption Commission will establish the issuance of integrity assurance certificates the same way the CID issue certificate of good conduct. I've said about integrity because integrity is all about you. It's all about the history and the lifestyle and so on and so forth. At the same time, Honorable Speaker, I support in totality skilled, lifestyle skilled. We want our children to learn skilled employment. It is good to learn. Then after acquiring, the great Oxford Dictionary, Bwana Speaker, if we all Google, education is a process indeed of giving or receiving systematic instructions in primary schools, secondary schools, in universities and institutions of higher learning. So, as there is no limit in education, it is important to let's move with speed, since we are, one of our roles is budget making process, and it will come into this August House. We shall set aside money for establishing this National Anti-Corruption Academy. By doing so, Honorable Speaker, we shall live we shall not live beyond our means. I want all of us to be, let's be happy whatever we have. But at the same time, I want these officers to have the following. I want them to be consistent at all times during their day-to-day practice. I want them to be compassionate. I want them to have passion of doing public service. I want total commitment. And I want connection and networking. More particularly the digital penetration platform. Kenya is among the top 10 nations in the world when it comes to digital infrastructure. At the same time, Honorable Speaker, competence is indeed a great tool. It is very key. So in this ratification of the agreement of establishment of International Anti-Corruption Academy as an international organization, I support. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you for giving me this opportunity, and we are committed to you and to the House as members of Parliament. Thank you, Speaker, and God bless you.
Member for Suba North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, at the onset, I wish to state that I do support the committee report. And Mr. Speaker, this is an agreement, or this report is based on an agreement that was signed between the International Criminal Police Organization, or Interpol, and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, or UNODC, in Vienna, in Austria, on the 13th of October 2008, to establish the International Anti-Corruption Academy. Mr. Speaker, sir, Kenya became a signatory to the conference on 2nd September 2010, when the Minister for Justice, National Cohesion, and Constitutional Affairs signed the agreement during the IACA's high-level founders conference that was held in Vienna, in Austria. As at 16th March 2016, the agreement had 67 parties and 53 signatories. So what this process that we are seeking to do as a country is to go through the process of ratification to ensure that there is sufficient membership so that this treaty goes into effect. Once it goes into effect, this academy will be established in Vienna, Austria, not in Kenya, and it will be training countries on fighting anti-corruption. Mr. Speaker, because of that, I would wish to support it, because we know that corruption is actually eating into the very fabric of our nations, not just Kenya, but especially in African countries. But Mr. Speaker, I think international trends has also shown that it is not only actually a malady that befalls African countries, even developed countries are complicit in corruption, except that they use fancy names. Like for instance, when in other countries, when they bribe members of parliament to pass a law, they call it lobbying, and they actually pay somebody to lobby, as a lobbyist, to come and talk to members of parliament to vote a given way. But when we try it in Kenya, then we are told we are actually influencing members of parliament. So I think for me, it is actually a challenge at an international level. It doesn't matter what fancy names we use, but it shows that internationally we have actually killed values that should be moving nations, and which should be the basis upon which countries are run. And Mr. Speaker, I would want to encourage us as a country that beyond this academy that seeks to look at a much higher level, we need to go look back as a country and see where we need to sort out the problem. And we need to look at it from the roots, and the roots are the little children. Mr. Speaker, some of us when we were growing up, we were taught values, not just in church, but in schools, through the books that we used to read. And there were very, very small, interesting stories that taught you values about honesty, that taught values about integrity, that taught values about inclusion, that taught values against anti-discrimination. But what do we have nowadays? Very recently we saw that we have even allowed books in the market that use 4-lettered words on 6-year-old and 10-year-old children. And we expect people not to be corrupt. We are already teaching them that this is the values that we live with as a country. And then as a country, we are also very quick to pass the buck, that whenever there's a problem, MPs, we all blame MPs. It's the most convenient way, but that is not the problem. Corruption has become so deeply entrenched and embedded in this country. And until and unless we deal with it from the root, Mr. Speaker, we might as well legalize it, like other countries, developed countries have done, and give it fancy names. When I became a member of parliament, I was shocked and astounded that I am trying to do a government project, and I'm being asked to bribe a government official to do a government project. You know, Mr. Speaker, I almost went into shock. I'm like, I thought people would ask me to bribe for something that benefits me as an individual. But to date, people will ask you to bribe them to do a project for the government, a person employed by the government, that have not gotten over yet, Mr. Speaker. And I know in one county, I won't name which one, that there are even people who are giving free donations. It was in the papers in the last parliament. And they were being asked to bribe that county so that then these people can give free donations to the county. As late as yesterday, somebody came to see me here in parliament and told me of a case where some people were to be given another county again, free money to build a health facility. They were told, unless you bribe us, we will not allow you. I think there's something wrong with us as a nation. There's something entirely wrong with our psyche as a nation. And that is what we need to figure out and sort out. The academy is good at the international level, but we must fix Kenya as a nation. And we no longer need to actually look outside, because outside they're having their problems. In the past, we'd sit here and say we want to be like America. America has its own challenges now, if you see. Let us look at Kenya, fix Kenya, and aspire to be like Kenya. I think this is the time for Kenya to be a shining light to the rest of the world. But we must agree as a nation that we are all rotten to the core. And it is not a problem of MPs. It is a problem of small children. That is why a little boy in school was able to go on air and talk to the whole country using four-lettered words and even threatening to kill another child. Why? Not because people are watching our own members. I saw the most, again, what I'm talking about, the convenience of saying MPs. When you are blaming MPs, where are you as a parent? What value are you teaching your own child as a parent? We need to agree as a country that we have a serious crisis. We are leaving the social media to give us values, to set values, and unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, it has gone to the churches. That before people would look for direction in the church has lost direction. And you actually find that in a case when we were talking about perhaps there's a time when now we need a law that would streamline the churches, and they say, no, we can self-regulate. How are you self-regulating when every single weekend there's a crisis in one church or the other? Mr. Speaker, I have not gone to church for the last 3 months because my own church is embroiled in a crisis. Why can't we sort out issues if we are waiting? In my own constituency, Mr. Speaker, yesterday I was being asked to help another church contribute money so that they can go to court to stop another wrangle. Mr. Speaker, if the church is not giving direction, who do we want to give direction? Then we come and blame politicians. By the very nature of a politician, we are meant to be evil. The church should be directing us. But when we are living, now we are the ones directing the country. Mr. Speaker, this is a country that is going to the dogs, that is looking to politicians for solutions. I'm not saying we are that terrible, but surely we cannot be the ones giving moral direction in this country. I am asking our churches, wake up, the country is burning, stop following money, stop having so much interest in money at the expense of a country that is going under. With those few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I am asking us as a country to go back and search in our hearts and ask, where did the rand start beating us? And not only ask, let us fix the problems we have as a nation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of order, Honorable Sankok?
Honorable Speaker, when it comes to issues of faith, I don't think we have the right to discuss as a House, Honorable Speaker, especially when it comes to donation. If your faith limits you to carry your donation in paper bag or in wallets, don't worry about those who carry in gunias. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
No, you know, that really, Honorable Sankok, that's not a point of order, that's a point of argument. And the Honorable Emilio Diambo did not even, indeed, she didn't talk about donations. So let's leave it at that. The Honorable Sankok did not, I thought he felt threatened, he might have thought that if you had taken the extra 1 more minute, you might have gone where he's referring to, but you didn't. Honorable Lentoimaga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I also support the committee's report. This was a very good report, especially on establishment of an international academy. This is because, sincerely, like all of us, we have accepted that corruption is really a disease that has eaten into our culture. Right from the time of inception of this country, it has built over time, and it has become part and parcel of our lives. We have actually agreed that every single opportunity we want to look for, every single business we want to do, you cannot believe that you can do it using your own skills, using your own knowledge, experience, unless you bribe somebody, unless you influence some people or some organization. It's like everything is just about corruption, even employment. Even young people who look for employment, and they are highly qualified, who are very highly qualified, they still have to look for ways and means of trying to influence the person they know, the person of high office, so that they can be able to grab that opportunity. So it's like, so this is about culture, it's about behavior, it's about attitude. It's no longer about corruption as it is. It has gone into be assisted through corruption. It is so deep, it's so embedded in our lives now. So this particular academy has come at the right time. And in fact, it has also dented our image. Our image is so bad within ourselves and even outside Kenya. For example, even investors who come to this country, they feel that investing in Kenya is so expensive, because whenever they want to do some investment, they have to influence some people to enable them to do that work they want to do. Even business people, everything in our life is but over time, Kenya government has also tried to put some measures to build some organizations like anti-corruption commissions. For almost 30 years, we have set up anti-corruption commissions in our country to try to fight corruption. Yeah, up to now, up to this particular moment, we have an anti-corruption commission. But through my experience and in my own way, in my own view, we are even fighting corruption in just on one way, by trying to fight it like a force. The way people are arrested, the way the counties are being attacked because you are looking for corrupt people. The manner in which anti-corruption is fighting corruption is not the only way it can succeed. To me, we need to all diversified ways of fighting corruption. Because at the moment, you can see anti-corruption sending maybe 100 investigators in one county, or going to arrest one person. It is so powerful the way they are doing it. It's like fighting Al-Shabaab. But I think that is not the only way you can do it. You are creating fear. You are scaring people. So I don't think it can help us. It has not helped, actually. People are still corrupt. People are still helping themselves to get what they don't, what does not belong to them. So in my view, this particular academy will go along to bring another dimension in fighting corruption, to support what is already existing. And at the academy, will do research, I suppose. People will exchange notes, people will exchange experiences, people will learn from other countries. It is an international, so we'll be able to actually to know what other countries are doing to fight the same vice. Countries that are advanced, countries that are also developing. I think that is like a hub where we can meet all of us and be able to understand how we can share notes and fight corruption. There could also be exchanges, benchmarking through this, so that we can know who is doing best, and we'll be able to actually do some kind of work that can help us eliminate this vice. I think also attitudinal change and behavioral change it can also input on culture so that we can restore the ethics we knew, the values, the respect, the honesty that we had known over time when we were young. Maybe because of that research, because research, people will now, scholars will research now deeply and come up with a more friendly way of fighting corruption and a more friendly way of actually convincing people not to steal, not to to be corrupt, instead of using existing commission alone to fight corruption. Because this country has laws that can be enforced to fight corruption. It has all the policies, but most of the time we don't enforce those policies. Neither do we enforce the laws that are there. We are only reactive. We only do something when a situation has happened. But we don't. This academy may help us to provide a long-term means of fighting corruption rather than becoming reactive just because you have seen some screaming headlines in the newspapers, or you have seen in the TV. Now you start bringing a multi-agency, you start quarreling and telling anti-corruption commission, why are you not doing this? And then they wake up. But academy is a continuous process, a continuous way of learning and assisting our people, even the young people who are in schools now. This commission can assist, this academy can assist. If you can start even in Kenya and also in the counties, it can go along to educate our young people right from primary school, right from primary school, secondary school, universities, and then this anti-corruption or values can be now embedded, and they can take root in our own communities, and also in our own homes, and also in our own schools, in colleges, and it will help us actually to fight corruption in a best way, because you cannot actually stop people unless they start believing that corruption is bad. Corruption is not the right way. It destroys our culture. It destroys our wealth. It denies our people opportunities for what they were looking for, and it can only benefit a few, not the whole community. So, Mr. Speaker, with those few remarks, I support this initiative, and I look forward to see it being implemented in a very near future. Thank you.
Member for Karachuonyo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me the opportunity to support this motion. Mr. Speaker, sir, corruption has become a very serious issue in this nation. It is a disease. It is a disease that requires urgent action, and it is a disease to which we must spend all the efforts in order that we either reduce it and, if possible, eliminate it. This is why I support the effort of an international anti-corruption academy, because I think it will address the issue maybe before the action is taken. Mr. Speaker, all our sectors are suffering from corruption. Our development is suffering from corruption. Our welfare is suffering from corruption. I do not know of anything now in Kenya which is not suffering from corruption. It is even necessary for us to start teaching our people against corruption, starting with schools, so that our children can have value that can be useful for this nation, value that can give us a new beginning. It is important we start. I know an international academy will give us a very good opportunity to handle this issue with others joining us. I support it because, in my understanding of what I suppose it will be, other nations will be coming to that institution. They will be coming to the academy. They will learn together with us, because the corruption we are suffering from is not concentrated and not touching on external participants. Sometimes this corruption is difficult to deal with because it is collaborative. You find that that nation has a bearing on what's happening in Kenya. And if we were to have we need action. We need action, Mr. Speaker, sir. This nation should spend some of the resources on educating our people so that they can change their attitude, so that they can change their values in order that they understand what can help this nation. I tend to believe that if it was not for corruption, Kenya would be comparable to Singapore. Kenya would be comparable to Malaysia. I'm talking of the countries which got independent during the time we were getting ours. And if they can go so far in terms of development, do anything others can do. But corruption is pulling us down. We need to spend our resources to educate our people. The idea of an international anti-corruption academy is good. I support it. And Mr. Speaker, let me say that we are on the right path. We should not even waste a second before we start this academy. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honorable Danita Gatti.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for the opportunity to support the report of the committee. Honorable Speaker, it is a good report, and I love the fact that the committee is proposing to establish an international anti-corruption academy. Mr. Speaker, sir, I've had an opportunity to visit the country that is Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur. And Mr. Speaker, we have had the opportunity to really study and exchange as a committee with the Parliament of Malaysia, and how Malaysia, Honorable Speaker, has so finally managed to curb corruption in that country. Mr. Speaker, the country that is Malaysia has actually established something that they're calling a similar academy. That is the Malaysia Anti-Corruption Commission that really works around what the committee is proposing. And every year, Honorable Speaker, that country has its president sit in the House to basically give a report of the state of corruption or anti-corruption in that country. And Honorable Speaker, if you remember, Kenya and Malaysia, by the time of independence, we were at the same GDP. And if you go to Malaysia, Honorable Speaker, because of anti-corruption laws that are in that country has actually really achieved what we are calling anti-corruption. Honorable Speaker, the mere fact that we want to establish this academy will enable us as a country to address the issue that is actually rampantly eating into our economy. Mr. Speaker, anti-corruption is with us. And Mr. Speaker, corruption is not just about money and these tangible things. People should know that corruption is the smallest things that we see, things that we do that the public does not see. If, for example, Honorable Speaker, a leader entitled with an office employs her son or his relatives in that office, that amounts to corruption. It is not just about what we see that we can quantify that this is corruption. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to really address the whole issue that is corruption in this country. And I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, that the committee is proposing that this academy basically does outreaches. You know, we have these public outreaches that this academy can go a long way in terms of, conducting community outreach to teach the community what corruption is all about. And Mr. Speaker, this country has the education sector. How then can we ensure that even as we develop a curriculum for this academy, we also ensure that even within our own school environment, our own schools, our own curriculum in schools must actually mainstream the issues that we are talking about anti-corruption, so that our children that are in grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4 are able to learn about these, these values that we are seeming and seeking to entrench in this country. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Lento Imanga has actually also mentioned, and Honorable Milio Odhiambo, that corruption actually has now even taken a different phase. It is getting into our religious institutions. Mr. Speaker, we need to also really also examine our religious institutions and the fight of religious institutions in corruption. We must engage our religious institutions in the fight against corruption to be able, Mr. Speaker, to really work with what the President is talking about, calling for zero tolerance to corruption in this country. Honorable Speaker, as I've said, for me, from where I sit, corruption has really killed the economy of this country, and it's high time that we had this kind of, international, standard and stature that actually can work together with the EACC that already we have in this country, that we can really put together, the efforts that EACC and other anti-corruption bodies have been doing to ensure that really we pull up our socks and address the issue, the cancer that is corruption in this country. Honorable Speaker, allow me to support the report. Thank you.
Honorable Passaris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I stand to support the report. I understand this was a report that emanated from a meeting between Interpol and UNODC in Vienna in 2016. An international integrity academy is a good idea. But at the end of the day, we have corruption in our country. And it's eating us. It's the reason why poverty levels are rising. It's the reason why we can't implement all the government projects. It's the reason why food security is a challenge. It's the reason why our housing is a challenge in the informal settlements, because all the land that belonged to the government was acquired fraudulently by past leaders. It's the reason why our hospitals lack facilities or adequate facilities, and challenges in terms of investments with entrepreneurs that do not result in us having the facilities that the government wants to put for its people. So I'm thinking an international academy ratifying so that we can get best practices, that is all in order. But we don't need an international academy. We need a curriculum in our schools in Kenya. We need to start teaching our children. It is very, very obvious that the religious sector, as Honorable Milio Odhiambo said, has failed us. And religious has also been riddled with corruption. We can see it every day. So many churches are guilty of owning huge parcels of land in this capital city of Nairobi that are sitting idle. If only they could return that land that was donated to them by the government, and they have not used it over the last 50 years, so that we can put orphanages and homes for our people. The church is guilty of corruption. How can it hold the moral authority to teach us how to have integrity? So just like we learn science, we learn maths, we learn physics, we learn English, let us learn about integrity. Let us define what integrity means. Let us examine our students on integrity. And when it comes to the adults, this parliament, through donors, sponsored us to go to an academy in China. We went to an academy, a group of us, and we were taught about integrity in that academy. We went to Malaysia, we were taught about integrity. It has become a curriculum from primary all the way to university for you to get a job. But then I ask myself, is it enough to have just the qualification on integrity? What is it that we need to change as a people? Is it the end times that Jesus is on his way here, so we are just faced with the worst of the worst? I begin to think that all the new age books, they teach us about we are our thoughts. I think when we wake up every morning and the first headline we see is corruption, 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 then we wake up and we think of ourselves as corrupt. If you have a child and you tell that child, you're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid, that child will become ultimately stupid. I think we need to change the way we talk to ourselves. Instead of calling it a corruption academy, I will call it an integrity academy. Instead of us talking about how corrupt we are, why don't we start looking about how much of us, how many contracts would have been still ongoing? We do have an issue, but we have a choice. But the thing is, this country also makes it easier for you to be corrupt than for you to be straight. I once heard Honorable Millie Odhiambo, who mentors me, standing here and saying, if you do not address the concerns of our citizens, the burials, the rentals, the food, the poverty, then you're forcing me as a leader, when I go into my constituency, to actually think, how can I be innovative to be able to help my people because they are hungry? You cannot get food from devolution, your people are hungry, your resources are limited. What do? You find a way to be corrupt. So it is very easy to be corrupt, even sometimes not because you want to be corrupt, but because you're dealing with very, very challenging poverty issues in this country. So this government has to find a way to sit with the leaders who are elected, and we create a fund that deals with the issues pertaining to corruption. Majority of the leaders here every weekend have to go back to their counties to look for money, or their constituencies to look for money to build a school. First of all, if a church leader calls me and tells me I want money for the church choir, I want money for the choir's uniform, I want money for the church building, I want money for the church bus, I tell them, pray to God. He's the one who's going to give you. He's the ultimate giver. Why are you asking me? You are the ones who have the God. Ask God. Why are you asking me? And they ask us because they think we're politicians, we should have the money. The same citizens who complain we are MPs are the same citizens when you go and you give 5,000 shillings. I remember it was Ellis, an MP from Thika, who went once and gave 5,000 shillings. At that time, I was not a member of parliament. And people ridiculed her and booed her. When you go and stand and you want to give money, you are actually, you're challenged, because if everybody's giving 100 and you go and give 10, you look like a fool. You even avoid to go to certain places. I went on social media and I said, I have no money, I am broke. You should have seen the way Kenyans were angry. They said I had a meltdown. I'm telling them the truth. Kenyans do not want to hear the truth. So the fact is, I think we need to have the self-talk. Let us stop blaming each other. Let us try and empower our citizens, and let us talk about family planning. This country does not have enough resources to look after the citizens that we have. In the 60s, we talked about family planning. Today, we are having children because we have Linda Mama. Linda Mama, utatoa mtoto hospitali. If it's a cesarean section, you're detained with your baby. You have to feed that baby. You have to educate the baby. There is a clip by Kibaki saying, you're asking serikali for everything. What about you? What are you going to give your serikali? So we need to actually go back to the drawing board as citizens of this country and say, if we love this country and we have no other country, how are we going to be honest with each other? Let us create structures in place that stop us from being corrupt. The police, if I was stopped by a police and I could pay my fine of 1,000 shillings, I would not be able to be hassled by the police to bribe. But because the police wants to get into your car, take you to Kibera, waste your time, and you're too busy, you'd rather part with the 2,000 shillings. Let us make it easy for us to pay penalties. Let us make it easy for the DCI. I mean, we have an opportunity as a country that invented M-Pesa to actually spearhead the fight against corruption. I'm commending Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, but there's a lot more that needs to be done beyond the handshake. It's not just tribalism, it is poverty. And the poverty that we have is a shame, because it is inflicted on us by the people that have been put in leadership. It is not these parliamentarians here who are corrupt. We cost only 1.7% of the national budget. The corruption is with the executive. Let's name it and shame it as it is. And when they come to oversight, we're oversighting accounts that were done for the last parliament. How are we supposed to fix it? So we're definitely a rotten society, and it is our country, it is our solution. So let us try and talk to ourselves in the right manner, that we as a country, we love this country, we as a people. I want to look in the mirror and love who I see. And I'll tell you one thing, ever since I became a politician, sometimes I question, who am I? What are my values? What are my integrity? Because I'm continuously looking for money to save somebody's life. I'm not talking about money for nothing. It's money to save somebody's life. Yesterday, I released a woman from Ongata Rongai Hospital, detained. We have laws that say do not detain, but they're still being detained. We make laws. We provide budgets. But if you make a law, and it's not being followed, if you put a budget and it's not being delivered, or it's being squandered, how are we going to deal with all these problems? So for me, I think Jesus Christ had better come, because even the churches have failed. And in the absence of Jesus Christ, can everybody carry their own cross and decide to be responsible for your own family? When you see your Mheshimiwa, don't hijack my car in the mtaa and tell me you're not going to be able to leave it until you give us money. I'm telling you, sometimes when you don't have money, you're called prostitute, you're stoned. It is a hard job. I'm not an MP. I have no intention to be an MP. But we need to teach integrity right from the academic, from the school, from nursery. Let us not sing poetry on corruption. Let us have poetry on integrity. Every child that stands up in a national event talks about corruption, corruption, corruption. It's time to stop.
Well said, Honorable Passaris. And I didn't want to interrupt your very passionate contribution. But next time, don't mix Swahili with English. You choose the language to start and finish with. But points well put. Let's have the Honorable Cecil Mbarire.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too wish to add my voice to this important motion. First, by congratulating this committee for a job well done, and also thanking the very many members who've been speaking to this matter since yesterday, and really talking passionately about this corruption that has really bedeviled our country. Madam Speaker, we are told that part of the activities of the role of this particular international academy is really to provide anti-corruption education and professional training so that people have the necessary skills and the necessary capacity to be able to fight corruption, to be able to prevent corruption. Also, the other activity will be undertaking and facilitating research into all aspects of corruption, which is very, very important, and providing other relevant forms of technical assistance in corruption. Madam Speaker, I've listened to many speakers this afternoon, having listened to Honorable Millie Odhiambo. I've now listened to Honorable Passaris, and I have one thing to say, that as a nation, we will not be able to deal with corruption until we change the thinking and the psyche of every single Kenyan living today. Today, Madam Speaker, if you have been in a position of authority and power and responsibility, and you retire without the so-called big money, you become the ridicule of society. Madam Speaker, we hear Kenyans saying, oh, look at him, I saw him driving a small car, or I saw him walking, or I saw him using a matatu, yet he used to be a permanent secretary in such and such a ministry. In other words, the thinking of the Kenyan is itself corrupt. So that when you get into an office, it is expected that you must live there with a lot of money, and in fact, when you live there with a lot of money, you are now the talk of the town. You're the person who is given the front seat wherever you go for events, for ceremonies, because you're a big man and you took good care of yourself when you got into that office. So I think we must start by, first of all, cleaning that thinking, doing away with that psyche, and training people to understand that it is important that people hold offices and they don't have to amass wealth when they're in those offices. And I want to agree with those that are saying this training must begin right from kindergarten level, where we begin to teach our children what corruption is, the side effects of corruption, and why living a life of integrity is better than living a life of corruption, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, socialization is the way we train our children, whether it is through schoolwork, education, or it is within our family setup where we train them certain values that they need to carry with them. Now, that kind of training is the most critical training if we really want to change this country. And I hope that we can begin to think of having a curriculum that is teaching our children about corruption, where we begin to train them about the need of integrity, because today, any leader living today in this country will tell you that we've reached levels where if we don't do something about it, this country will go under. Madam Speaker, let me say this, that for the longest time I've been in leadership, this is the first time I am seeing some serious effort towards fighting corruption. It is so serious that if you go to government offices today, they will tell you, nowadays, we are extremely careful, we are being watched, and things have changed. I like that new narrative that you're fighting in government offices. In the past, nobody cared because we knew nothing will happen to you no matter what you do. I'm happy that the narrative is changing. But besides instilling fear in officers, we need it to be a way of life. A corrupt-free life must be a way of life. It must be the thing that you want to do because it is the right thing to do. So I hope that we can move to the next level, and that can only happen if we begin this training right from childhood, Madam Speaker. I also hope that we also can realize that you cannot put all the pressure on politicians and hope to fight corruption. We must begin to appreciate politicians who come to Harambes and give only what they can afford, and we clap for them because they have done the right thing. And I think, I listened to the Honorable Passaris, and I feel her as a politician. As we get closer to elections, we are likely to get accolades if you're the one taking 100,000 in this church, and another one, and nobody asks where that money comes from. In fact, they are very happy. They say, ooh, this MP is doing very well, this leader is doing very well, he's bringing 100,000 in this church, he went to another one, gave 50, another 200,000, and we clap. But the one who comes with 10, 20, they say, this guy is not serious. How can you give 20,000? How can you give 5,000? How can you give 10,000? I think it's about time our Kenyan psyche is changed. We change the thinking of Kenyans. And I think it will take a lot of civic education to get there so that we can really appreciate leaders for what they do more than what they give. Because what they do is more important than what they give. With those few remarks, Madam Speaker, I beg to support.
Honorable Jumbo Oundo. You spoken to it?
Yes, Honorable Speaker, I have spoken on the matter.
Great. Let's have the Honorable Oduol Adhiambo.
Madam Speaker, I spoke on it as well.
You did? Member for Migori.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I wish to add my voice to what my colleagues have said. This idea of starting this academy or establishing it sounds good, and I think Kenya being part of the original agreement, we have no really objection to this. However, Madam Speaker, I want to quote from the book I love so much with my heart. Proverbs 22 and verse 6 says, teach a child the way he or she should go, and he or she will not depart from it when he or she is old. I think this summarizes exactly what not only Kenyans, but the entire world needs to do. Now, coming back to Kenya, it is amazing that this concept of corruption, we've always talked about it, cried over it, accused one another for it, but we do very little to actually stop ourselves from practicing it. And so, allow me to say, Madam Speaker, that what we need to do as a nation, as a people, the entire human race, may not be necessarily starting or establishing academies upon academies, but it is a matter of bringing ourselves to a level where we agree this is ethical, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable, and for the well-being of the entire human race, we do only the acceptable things. Take the case of Kenya, for example. I pray that this academy, if established, will bring the harmony and the agreement on what we agree as a people is right and what is not right. Take the example of a case like stealing of cows in Kenya. We have christened it cattle rustling. And we've seen communities battle and even kill because one community took their cattle yesterday and tomorrow the other one revenges. What is interesting about this whole saga is that when you talk to these communities, to some, it is heroic, especially for young men who want to get married, to go and steal somebody's cow and then go pay their dowry. To another, it is stealing and robbing. And I think even as we talk about this issue of corruption, we need to bear in mind the nature of the diverse cultures and beliefs in our country. We need to bring ourselves as a people to the understanding that this one causes pain to the other person next to me, and we need to stop it. And that's why I'm saying the whole ultimate answer lies in the issue of training ourselves, teaching ourselves the way that we should go when we are young, and then when we are old, like we are today, we will not depart from it. It is not good to sometimes hibernate behind culture, because we can only practice a culture as long as it is pleasing to every one of us. But the moment another person, another human being, another life is hurt and crying because of my practice, then I need to question it. I think in Kenya, this is an area that we need to investigate and agree with, that yes, we are all human beings, and yes, we might have been born from different mothers, but the underlying principle is that we all want to be happy, and therefore we must stop doing things that make the other person unhappy. Look at the case of business communities in Kenya. What we have seen is an overexploitation of the customers in the name of overpricing, you know, the liberalization of what I charge for my cloth in case I'm selling clothes and somebody else charges another price. The same cloth, you can buy it in Kenya at various prices. This overpricing, to the business practitioners, it is good business. But to the customer, it is actually sheer exploitation. And therefore, I agree with the former speakers that have said the healing of our land is not in the academy per se, but it is in the healing and the restructuring of our mind, our attitude, the thought, behavior. When we question all these things that we do, then we will come up with solutions to corruption issues. Look at our legal system. You wonder why somebody is caught stealing, somebody is caught killing, and there are even eyewitnesses. But then, when these things reach the court, then you are shocked, if not amazed, that somebody is dismissed because there was not enough evidence. Now, one wonders in Kenya, what exactly should comprise enough evidence? It is high time we stop the blame game. I agree on every point that my senior Honorable Millie Odhiambo said a few minutes ago about corruption creeping into the church and corrupting the minds of even church leaders and our worshippers that we have always looked unto for solutions that are ethical and right and holy in nature. However, I disagree with the part that is saying that most of the time the politicians are blamed for wrong behavior, and by nature of politics, somehow we are supposed to be like that. I really choose to disagree with that, and I think with the correct position is, when we are talking about politicians, we are talking about to bunge. Let me be appreciated for that, even as long as I can deliver my mandate to my people and to my country. With this kind of attitude, with this kind of mindset, we will be able to deal with corruption. So I'm looking forward for a Kenya where a no means a no and a yes simply means a yes. If we can do that as members of parliament, as ministers, as presidents, as teachers in our schools, we will deal with corruption once and for all. It is amazing when I mention schools that our teachers are actually employed. I've been a teacher myself, and I really sympathize with our teachers, that they are doing a lot of work, and that is godly. But you go to a school and you are told that the teachers need motivation. And what does that mean? It means the parents have to pay more for the teachers to be able to dedicate themselves to take care of the work that they're actually employed to do. I think Kenya, we need to speak to ourselves, and we can talk and add more to the list, cases which make us wonder as a people, where are we exactly heading? Why should we, even as MPs like Honorable Pasari puts it, why would you be harassed even to the extent that you cannot go to your home because everybody is expecting money from you? It is important that we realize that this corruption has killed us and is burying us and celebrating over us, and it is high time we revived our spirits, our souls, to listen to the inner cries of every one of us, because we are all crying in one way or another. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think I support this report.
Order, Honorable Pamela. There is a point of order. Is it over what something she has said, or? Yes.
Oh, thank you, Honorable Speaker. I don't know if it is really in order for Honorable to indicate that she knows something called motivation, which only teachers receive. Could she elaborate to the House what that means and how that's a corrupt act? Because otherwise accusing a whole fraternity of teachers. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Pamela?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Just clarify.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Please give me a minute to answer that. Honorable Member, I was only giving that as an example. I didn't see you raise a question when she used the church to say how corruption is killing us. So I think that was just but an example, and I'm not attacking the teachers. I'm a teacher myself, and I know what I'm talking about, sir. Let us speak the truth.
Let's have the Honorable Osotsi Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity.
Honorable Sankok, no, I'm not giving you, because we just prosecuted a point of order by Honorable Milemba over Honorable Dr. Pamela's contribution, and that has ended. So unless you are purporting that the Speaker is out of order, which you cannot. Come on, Honorable Sankok. You cannot now again purport to speak for another member. Let's have the Honorable Osotsi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to also raise my voice over this very important motion. Madam Speaker, corruption, as my colleagues have said, is a really cancer in this country. But I want to support Honorable Mboko Milemba that this will not be a solution to the problem of corruption in this country, Madam Speaker. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that because we have passed 21 legislation in this House touching on matters of corruption. Corruption has not ended. 21 pieces of legislation. Madam Speaker, this country has signed 3 treaties on matters of corruption. The UN Convention Against Corruption, the AU Convention Against Corruption, the African Peer Review Mechanism, and again, Madam Speaker, in our own constitution, we have like about 6 different references to matters of corruption. Article 10 of the Constitution on national values, Article 6 on leadership and integrity, Article 232 on values and principle of public service, Article 79 on EACC, Article 80, all these are talking about corruption. But every day we hear people have stolen billions of money and nothing happens. In fact, we are even using the wrong term. We need just to call it stealing. Because when someone goes and steals money from a public institution, billions of money, and we still term that corruption, I think we are not being fair to ourselves. We need to differentiate what is corruption and what is pure theft. And I think the country will move forward. As we are speaking now, this country is ranked number 144 globally in terms of corruption ranking. In fact, the latest figures indicate that even countries that have been more corrupt than us, like Nigeria, are way above us. We are going down and down every day because we talk too much about corruption, but we do nothing. We do nothing about it. And it goes on and on and on. You hear that people have been arrested, they go to court, but after a short time, those people are free. And they continue using the money that they stole from the government. So, Madam Speaker, it is more of an issue of values and attitude than just taking people to class to teach them matters of corruption. Because if that was the case, then we should have dealt with matters of corruption with finality by implementing the 21 laws that we have already. And Madam Speaker, I have just been reading some policy, I think sessional paper number 2 of 2018, which was tabled in June by the majority leader, on the national ethics and corruption policy. And some of the things that are in that policy are really shocking, because when they say that one of the challenges of fight against corruption is lack of domestication of some international anti-corruption instruments. We have 3 international anti-corruption instruments that this country has ratified. But how much has come from it? Very little. So we need to do a lot more as a country, and I hope this policy will be able to address some of the objectives that it has stated. For example, it has stated that its main objective is to ensure there is sufficient and sustainable political support. And I want to agree with them. The biggest problem in the fight against corruption is political goodwill. And I want to thank our 2 leaders, Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta and Honorable Raila, for the handshake where they are focused on matters of corruption. But we need to see a lot more being done. By now, people who stole money in Kimarel and other places, Mumias Sugar now is completely dead. A giant for the Western region. It is completely shut down. Bushes are all over. Nothing is happening. And Madam Speaker, we are all not doing anything. The people who stole their money from Mumias Sugar, we are so bitter. All those managers should be in. I don't know what they are doing outside. We are less. Even what we saw this week, the lady and the child drowning in Mombasa, those are effects of corruption. Every year we appropriate money to Kenya Ferry Services, and they cannot even engage divers to save Kenyans from simple accidents like those ones. Madam Speaker, this country will halt was made the leader of EACC. I rejoice because I knew for once a religious person leading EACC will bring change at EACC. But ever since he got the job, we don't hear about him. In fact, we used to hear more about him when he was the Archbishop than now. So what has happened? So my good friend Wabukala, please, you are a leader of integrity. Do something about corruption. We have put you there to do something about corruption. Something that you used to talk in the pulpit, we want you to implement it. So that, as someone said, the church should help. I want to agree. The churches should also help. Because when we were growing up, we used to go to church and they used to tell us that stealing is bad. But nowadays, they don't tell us about stealing. They in fact tell us to bring more money, including the money that we have stolen. So, Madam Speaker, whereas I agree, it is important for the country to ratify this treaty, I do not think ratification of a treaty is enough to fight corruption. It is political goodwill, it is integrity of our people, it is promotion of good values.
Order, Honorable Osotsi. I can see a point of order from Honorable Gladwell, member for Baringo.
Madam Speaker, I'm standing on a point of order using the standing orders number 95. That actually, Madam Speaker, we've really debated on this matter. And from where I'm standing, I know matters corruption is actually so touching. And I was thinking, Madam Speaker, having debated all this time, looking at the contributions of the members, if I also stand to be corrected, is that we actually are saying the same things almost all the time. And I was thinking, at this point, if we can use the time to call the mover to reply, if the House can agree with me. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Yes. Is that the feeling of members? Yes. I'm going to let the Honorable Osotsi finish his contribution, and then we'll put it to question. Honorable Osotsi.
Thank you. So, Madam Speaker, right now we have 78 countries that have ratified this treaty. Now Kenya will join the other countries who have ratified, including Uganda and other neighboring countries. But, Madam Speaker, as I've said, this is not the solution to the problem of corruption. The problem of corruption is political goodwill, and President Uhuru has started demonstrating that by how we hoped that this handshake should have happened much earlier in his first term, so that now we would be seeing the fruits of fight against corruption. For that remark, I oppose.
Very well. Honorable members, you know, I cannot make the decision for members. So I'm going to put the question on whether we call upon the mover to reply, and then we see how it goes. Honorable members, I put the question on motion number 8, that the mover be now called to reply. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say no? No. The ayes have it. I'll now call upon the mover. That is Honorable Cecily.
Madam Speaker, I don't know whether I'm allowed to reply on behalf of the chair of the committee, since I can't get it.
Are you on instructions from the
Yes,
chair?
yes.
Yes.
We have spoken.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, let me thank all the members who have ably contributed to this important motion since yesterday. Obviously, we all know that the matter of corruption has been in everybody's tongue, especially in the last, I would say, 20 years almost. And we have seen a lot more action in the last 5 or so years, and lately in the last 2-3 years. And we only wish as a House that there will be real action, and that this real action will bear fruit, Madam Speaker. And although I had the Honorable Sotsi really, really negative about the efforts that are taking place, he'll agree with me that if he looks at the history of all former regimes, this regime is the one that has really taken real action, never seen before in the fight against corruption. And so let's give credit where it's due. We are not there yet, certainly. There's so much more to be done, but I think it's always good to appreciate the little gains that we make as a nation, as a people, because for the first time, we are seeing some real work being done towards fighting this pandemic, and I'm sure going forward, we are going to see even much more being done. And so, Madam Speaker, let me appreciate all the great support that this motion has had on behalf of the chair of the committee, and thank the committee for a job well done, and really hope that going forward, we are going to see even more enhanced efforts towards fighting corruption. With those few remarks, I beg to reply.
Other members, we shall defer the putting of the question until we have the business back on the order paper. Next order.
Order number 9, motion, report on a fact-finding mission on the welfare of migrant Kenyan workers in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Honorable Milemba? Oh, you have instructions from your chair?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. On Speaker, I beg to move the following motion. That the House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on the visit to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, on a fact-finding mission on the welfare of the migrant Kenyan workers in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia from February 27th to March 3rd, 2019, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, August 8th, 2019. Honorable Speaker, one of the key challenges the country has faced over the past decades is unemployment. However, unemployment is not just a Kenyan challenge, but a global challenge. International Labour Organization, ILO, in 2018, released a report on global unemployment and indicated that 192 million people worldwide remain out of work, translating to a global unemployment rate of 5.6%. Honorable Speaker, Kenya's unemployment, according to the ILO, stands at 18.4%. This is among the highest in the world. The challenge is aggravated by the fact that about 1 million of new entrants enter the labor market annually. The youth remain the largest part of unemployed person in the country, consisting a huge potential of social, political conflict. Madam Speaker, all key actors from government, the industry, and training institutions have a collective duty to create opportunities that translate to meaningful participation of youth in the development of their communities and nation. Honorable Speaker, the committee recognizes the need for the country to explore foreign employment opportunities as a panacea, rather solution, to the challenge of unemployment that is currently facing the country. The committee fact-finding visit had the following objectives. 1, to establish the welfare of Kenyan workers in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in the face of the widespread media reports on the mistreatment and death of Kenyans arising from their employment. 2, to ascertain the implementation of the bilateral labor agreement between Kenya and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in order to participate in the promotion of the Kingdom as a destination country for migrant Kenyan workers. To attain the stated objectives, the committee held meetings with Kenyan Ambassador to Riyadh, Ambassador Peter Ogego, whom we found was a very experienced ambassador having worked in the USA. We also held meetings with the labor attaché representatives of Kenya. We also held meetings with the representatives of Kenyan migrant workers in Saudi Arabia, and also held meetings with the Ministry of Labor officials on Saudi Arabia from Wednesday 27th, February 2019 to Monday 4th, March 2019. Committee findings, Honorable Madam Speaker, were as follows. That the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia hosts approximately 11 million foreigners as employees in various job categories. Out of the above figure, Kenya has approximately 55 migrant workers in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, which translates to a minimal percentage as compared to what other countries have.
Honorable Milemba, did you say 55?
55,000. 55,000 migrant workers in the kingdom from Kenya. 55,000, Honorable Speaker. Okay, I could repeat that, Honorable Speaker.
Member for Baringo, but you don't shout across.
No, I will repeat.
And I just asked him to clarify the number because you said 55.
Thank you, I'll redo it, Honorable Speaker. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia hosts approximately 11 million foreigners as employees in various job categories. Out of the above figure, Kenya has approximately 55 migrant workers, 55,000 migrant workers in the kingdom, which translates to a minimal percentage as compared to what other countries have exported to the kingdom. However, to accommodate the 11 million workers in the kingdom has undertaken various measures ranging from legal to social frameworks. These measures are meant to guarantee the welfare of the migrant workers in the kingdom. Honorable Speaker, some of the countries that have the highest number of migrant workers in Saudi Arabia, like Sudan, are like Pakistan, are like Egypt and Afghanistan. Honorable Speaker, measures that have been undertaken by the government of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to address the welfare of the workers include: one, on wages. In an effort to address unpaid or delayed salaries, the Saudi government, through the Ministry of Labor and other state authorities, enacted legislations to control employers and employees in terms of wages. According to provisions of the labor laws, currently, an employer must pay wages earned by the employee by 5th of the following month. Any employer who fails to pay wages by 5th risks a fine of not less than Saudi riyals of 5,000. Honorable Speaker, that can be translated if you check your Googles to see how much is the equivalent of the Saudi SAR. Their currency is called SAR, 5,000, and that's the fine they have to pay. And also risks being blocked from transacting any business, including freezing his or her account. This is already being enforced. The wages to employees are fixed by agents and their clients based on the ability of employer to pay far above the minimum wage fixed by the joint technical team, whichever is greater. So, Honorable Speaker, the wages have been fixed. and there's a joint team that fixes wages. Now, once an employee goes there, the wage will be determined by the potential of that employer to pay. And it must be above what the minimum that the Joint Technical Committee has always fixed. Madam Speaker, the employer must open an account in the name of the employee to deposit wages before 5th of the following month, and the same reflects at the Ministry of Labor through an automated system called Musaned. Musaned. They have a system called Musaned. So this agreement and payment is reflected to entire system through this particular system, managed by the ministry. The Kenyan mission in Saudi will also be granted access to the system to enable monitoring of this system. Madam Speaker, on employment contracts, which have vastly been talked about, employment contracts, to address the numerous complaints of unscrupulous agents drafting fake contracts, the Ministry of Labor in the Kingdom has developed standard contracts through Musaned system for domestic workers, which are observed by both employers and recruitment agents. On hiring an employee, an employer must issue a copy of the contract to the employee. Otherwise, he risks a fine of not less than 5,000 SARS, that is Saudi Arabian money. According to the standard contracts, no employer can transfer an employee to work for another family member, as the same is considered violation of contracts. Madam Speaker, as later on I'll be explaining, this transfer of one employee from one family to another is the one that brings a lot of problems in terms of mistreatment of the workers. Madam Speaker, on work permits, the work permit is issued for 5 years, renewed annually by the employer. This permit is only issued to employees who enter the kingdom on contract. Employees who violate the contracts are deprived their right to ownership of work permits, which are also called the ICAMA. Such employees lose medical cover, rights to to get housing facilities, free food, security, and other privileges that are enjoyed under contract. These employees are referred to as runaways or stateless illegal migrants. These type of employees in Saudi Arabia normally are exposed to all sorts of illegal activities, and which are from time to time escalated in the social media. This group of employees is likely to fall into the hands of unscrupulous employers who are not monitored through the recognized Musaned system, and are actually cheated by some unscrupulous agents to go to Saudi Arabia without going through the correct system. And they are the ones that fall victim of unscrupulous employers and really punish them. And these are the employees we call the runaways. So they live in Saudi Arabia like the government does not know they are there. On hours of work, Madam Speaker, the Saudi Arabia laws require domestic workers are expected to work for not more than 9 hours per day. Those working in ZRS areas are expected to work for 7 hours per day. This is in accordance to the provisions of the Saudi Arabian law under Article 98, Article 99, and Article 100. Madam Speaker, on annual leave, which is another labor requirement, under Article 109, the Saudi labor laws, a worker is entitled to prepaid 21 working days leave in a year of not less than 12 months. Under Article 110 of the Saudi Arabian laws, a worker may, with the approval of the employer, postpone his annual leave to the following year thereof. But the employer can in aggregate. A worker is entitled to accrue leave days pay if not taken at the time of separation, which the employer with the employer. This is in accordance with Article 111 of the Saudi Arabian laws. So when we look at the labor, the annual leave, it is similar to the international standards. On rest days, Honorable Madam Speaker, an employee in Saudi Arabia is entitled to 1 day rest on Fridays every week, which is with full pay. Any rest day worked is not compensated by cash, but by 1 extra rest day. This is in accordance to Article 104 of the Saudi Arabian laws. Madam Speaker, on service pay, they have something called service pay. A worker is entitled to have salary for every complete year during the first 2 years, but less than 5 years of service. Any employee who works for more than 5 years is entitled to 1 month's salary for every complete year of service. This is for employees who earn their salaries at the end of the month. This is in accordance with Article 84 of the Saudi labor laws. For employees who earn their wages in a period less than 1 month, they are entitled to 1/3 of their wages for the period complete year in the period less than 5 years of service. All terminal benefits are to be paid within a period less than 2 weeks from the date of separation. This is in accordance with Article 85 of the Saudi Arabian laws. Please note that all the payments are calculated on the basis of the final wage rates paid to employees. During termination, either party is expected to issue 1 month notice in writing or pay cash in lieu to the other party. Honorable Speaker, this is also happening in our country as part of the labor laws that we have in Kenya. Other measures, Honorable Speaker. In an effort to alleviate the challenges faced by workers who, for one reason or another, terminate their contracts before securing other jobs, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has set up newly constructed centers equipped with all household facilities, with labor, migration, and security offices. These centers are serving as call centers for domestic workers to make reports whenever their employers deny them their rights. Through these centers, where disputes are concluded and the employer is unable to settle, the government pays the employee and is left to follow up with the employer, who is temporarily blocked from transacting any business until the government recovers the money. Honorable Speaker, on this one, there are dispute centers that have been created in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So if there's a dispute between the worker and the employer, it is sorted out in that particular area. But if the employee is correct, then the government takes over the payment of the salaries and dues of that particular worker and follows that particular rogue employer. Similarly, Madam Speaker, the government established regional social offices to handle cases associated with adultery, prostitution, and also follow up cases of unpaid salary, alcoholism, and rape. These offices are of crucial importance since majority of the ladies are victims of the same offenses. The centers also perform guiding and counseling. They similarly serve as deportation centers where, if a female employee has no case with the employer, can only stay there for a period of not more than 10 days. Honorable Speaker, these are centers which actually give freedom or some allowance to employees who have terminated their contracts with employers to get reprieve before they are deported channels. This immigration department must be equally vigilant on movement of persons to these countries to ensure only Kenyans with under the Msaned system are allowed to travel. I had earlier explained what the Msaned system is. Another finding is that the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection and that of Foreign Affairs must continuously monitor the implementation of bilateral labor agreement to ensure that the measures initiated to protect Kenyans working in Saudi Arabia are fully adhered to. The Office of the Labor Attaché must also be strengthened and allocated adequate resource in order to fully monitor employment trends in the kingdom.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to speak over the issue of Saudi Arabia. I must say that having listened to that report and knowing very well what we've been seeing, most of the country are faced with dire unemployment. I speak for people from Kajulu, I speak for people from Seme, people from Kano, people from Kolwa, people from Nyakach, young people who are educated but are faced with unemployment. I know very well that I would be the first one to support any employment opportunities for our young people. Madam Speaker, when we know that 80% or 70% of our population is comprised of the young people, and we know that 80% of those young people are not employed, and we also very well know that an idle mind is the home of the devil, because when you are educated, you have enhanced aspirations, you have enhanced hopes, and if you're not able to satisfy that through employment, obviously you'll get into other social ills that are not good for the society. But I also know that I value life of all Kenyans. I value life of the unemployed youth. And just to solve the issue of employment, I will not exchange their lives for employment in Saudi Arabia or any other country in that matter. We also know that the prime responsibility of the government is to protect its citizens. And we know that whether the people who go to Saudi Arabia to seek employment do so legally or illegally, they still remain Kenyans, and the Kenyan government has the sole mandate and responsibility to look after them and protect their lives. The report clearly indicates all the glossy measures and all the steps that Saudi Arabia has taken to ensure that anybody who seeks employment in that country is well protected. But my question is, if we have all those stringent laws put in by Saudi Arabia, how come we have so many Kenyans losing their lives and so many Kenyans crying foul anytime that they seek employment in that country? For that, Madam Speaker, I oppose the report, and I request that we all oppose the report and give that committee an opportunity to come back with a better report. I also am convinced that when the committee went to Saudi Arabia, they did not do due diligence according to the mandate and objective that they set out to work on. Instead, it sounds to me, or it looks to me, that the report they are giving us is a glossy report that has actually been written and documented by the Saudi government itself. So that question still begs.
I also order you that the member for Baringo is safe, protected, and can listen to the debate. Please just stay in your seat. She doesn't want to consult with you. Yeah, so you'll be out of order if you do bully, as she says. And then she says you're also a mono. We don't have monos. Very well. I'm sure it was on a light note because they are the member for Seme.
Madam Speaker, I was
sorry. So the member for Seme wanted to support, I'm sure, the member for Baringo, but he has already removed his card from intervention. Carry on, Honorable Member for Kimilili.
Madam Speaker, you should give me more time. And I was just even asking the Honorable for Baringo to come and sit next to me if Songoko was harassing her, Madam Speaker. It is good that Madam has gone out. Madam Speaker, this topic is a very important and sensitive topic for this country. The reason as to why this committee was tasked by this House to investigate this matter is because, Madam Speaker, this is a matter of grave national importance. Even as I reject this report, Madam Speaker, I will want you to give, as I oppose this report, I will want you to give direction that either this committee relooks into this matter or you appoint an ad hoc committee who understands the importance of this matter, Madam Speaker. At times, when you hear that any foreign national in this country had been mistreated, you will see the whole envoy and the whole government, where that person comes from, raising a concern, Madam Speaker. But we have seen Kenyans suffering in Saudi Arabia, but the government doesn't take any action. And it becomes more worse, Madam Speaker, if a whole committee of this House goes to investigate, and instead of giving this House, giving Kenyans a tangible and a proper report, they are giving a report that seeks to exonerate, to give a contrary view, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is not acceptable. This matter must be looked into afresh because it's a very important matter, Madam Speaker. We know very well that we have very many Kenyans who have suffered, even died in Saudi Arabia. And I want to tell this committee, Madam Speaker, that it doesn't matter the level of education of the people who are seeking employment in Saudi Arabia, but they must be protected. We need an explanation of any suffering that is inflicted on our Kenya's people, Madam Speaker. So this report, Madam Speaker, falls short of their mandate. And I was even wondering how it was, how the members approved it to be before this House, because it is contrary to the mandate they were told to go to investigate, Madam Speaker. This is completely, if you look at their recommendations number 5.2, where they're even saying that we should even spend more money to carry out campaigns that whatever we've been seeing on TV, on social media, is not true. If you look at their recommendation number 5.1, Madam Speaker, where they are saying, 5.5, where they're even saying that the government should spend money to train Kenyans who are going to work in Saudi Arabia on what they expect in Saudi Arabia, I want to put before this committee that there are very many Kenyans who look for employment in all over all parts of the country. We have some who go to Uganda, we have some who go to Tanzania, we have some who go to America, we have some who goes even...
Madam Speaker, I'd like to inform Honorable Millie Odhiambo that I have wholly accepted Honorable Sangok.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Honorable, now the Speaker has to protect Honorable Sankok. Honorable Sankok, you're protected. Honorable Rosambuyu, Honorable Rosambuyu says you are not harassing her. In fact, you are consulting. Honorable Millie Odhiambo was just afraid. And from where I sit, Honorable Millie Odhiambo, Honorable Sankok is too far from me. Is too far from me. So for that one, I don't think whether he can harass you from where he is. And calling a mono, you know, you may put Honorable Sankok in bad names to harass. And Honorable Mbuyu has just confirmed that Sankok is in order. Honorable Sankok, you are protected by the chair, by the Speaker. Thank you. Honorable Millie, on a different thing, but not Sankok. Let's not discuss Sankok anymore.
Madam Speaker, thank you for giving us that opportunity. We've been sitting in this House for very long, so commercial breaks are good. But I'm just wondering, Madam Speaker, that sometimes when we raise points of order, we disappear in the system. And because we are many and we've been queuing for long, that means I go at the bottom again on the queue. I am very worried, Madam Speaker, because I've been here for very long, the whole afternoon.
The Speaker caught you high and we know where you are, Honorable Millie. Only that you should also know to, which I know you are aware, I'll use your system, sometimes they go down, that if you are going for intervention, you know the button for intervention, so you don't remove your card from your request to speak, you just press the, but we are taking note of that about the system.
Madam Speaker, this is actually a report that should be extremely important to competent-based education because of the problem of unemployment. Therefore, it is obvious that some of our youth will go outside the country to actually seek the opportunities elsewhere. And Madam Speaker, may I be protected from this loud discussion? Madam Speaker, we know that there are countries where the opportunities, like the report has indicated, there are 11 million workers in Saudi Arabia, of which only 55,000 are Kenyans. So definitely there's a good opportunity there. But we also know that some people go there illegally, others go there legally. And all these people meet different conditions, and some suffer severely, and we have had reports of people even dying. Therefore, Madam Speaker, the countries of origin have the obligation to protect their citizens when they go out there by looking at the recruitment processes, looking at training them before they leave, ensuring that international labor rules are adhered to, and that these people are safe. And in my view, Madam Speaker, that is what this report was meant to bring before us. And if you look at the objective of the committee itself, on page 5 of this report, number 6, to establish the welfare of Kenyan workers in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in the face of widespread media reports of mistreatment and even death in Kenya rising from their employment. And number 2, to ascertain the implementation of the bilateral labor agreements between Kenya and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Madam Speaker, this report does not actually give us anything on that line. As regards the welfare of Kenyans, we were expecting a report. The nearest thing is there are 55,000 Kenyans there. How they are living, how they're distributed, how many went there legally, how many are suffering. What we wanted was a clear report. These are the number of Kenyans there, these were illegally there, and these are how they are living there. And we would have expected even a report of the people who have come back, either people who have come back either dead or people who have suffered. And we expected those figures, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. What we have got is actually to tell us what these laws are, what the agreements are, what the labor laws are, which you can get in a textbook anywhere. And that has not been related at all to what is happening to the Kenyans there. I would have expected any time that the mover gave that this is what the law is, as indicated, but what the Kenyans are going through are this and this and this. That has not come. So, Madam Speaker, this report would have been written without leaving this country. The relationship between the laws that are there, the relationship between the laws, you did not need to travel anywhere to do. That you can get in the books, you can get from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. That's all we needed to do. What we needed, the Kenyans are there, what is happening to them? If there are problems, what steps are being taken? That has not been there. Then, and you go to the observations, Madam Speaker, the observations are also pretty generic, Madam Speaker. Committee observations. Kenyans have been finding their ways into the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia illegally. These Kenyans are being facilitated by either unregistered agents or an individual Kenyans who acquire visiting. Again, we needed data here. So many Kenyans who have gone illegally. We also expected to know these agents that are taking Kenyans away, which are they? Are they registered? Are they legal? Or are they unregistered? Madam Speaker, in the line with the bilateral agreement with Kenya and Saudi Arabia, several measures have been initiated to protect Kenyans. What are these measures? And if the measures are there, how does it relate to what has happened to Kenyans who are there? Madam Speaker, if then you go to the recommendations, the Ministry of Labor and Social Services and the national government should ensure thorough vetting of employment of agencies to ensure Kenyans travel to Saudi Arabia and other destinations through officially recognized channels. Again, that is obvious. That is what they should do. And then you say the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, that Foreign Affairs continuously monitor the implementation of Now, that is the crux of the matter. They are in Saudi Arabia. So many have gone through this. So many have gone through this. Who then looked after them? Who saw them? Who did they see? Then we can say, okay, the Ministry of Labor probably needs a labor attaché in Saudi Arabia to sort out these problems. So that is not there. The National Employment Authority and it is the only thing they are saying that there are many opportunities, but even when you say the 55,000 Kenyans in Saudi Arabia, you would have wanted to know how many are casual workers, how many are teachers, how many are doctors. Then you can now say, okay, we have opportunity and there are other people that can go there. So, Madam Speaker, this report, I reject it. And what should actually be done, this committee should give us a better report. But I'm not so sure they have a report somewhere. If they went there and they didn't get the data, so where are they going to get a report? Actually, what this points out, this House should recommend that a team goes to these countries where the problem and we get a better report here. Madam Speaker, I reject this report.
You reject. The member, I'm sure the members are here, and even the members. The member for order, the members were. The member for Kitui West, Honorable Nyenze. She just left her card. She's consulting. Member for Siaya.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I just want to make a few comments. One, a report such as this that are set out to look for information about Kenyans living in Saudi Arabia or any other country, and where the Kenyans have suffered a lot, you start by knowing how many have suffered. Because really, Saudi Arabia is a name that sends cold shivers down your spine when you mention it to somebody to go and look for a job. Personally, I've tried to get a job for certain young people, and they keep telling me, help me get a job elsewhere, but not Saudi Arabia, just because of the things that they see in the social media. The newspapers have covered a lot of stories, personal experiences of those that have suffered in Saudi Arabia, and why this report does not capture or look for these victims of violence here in Kenya, the ones that returned. The one that I saw of Saudi Arabia was 2 weeks ago. It was a video that captured a young man blindfolded. And that program tells you how they are working hard in those countries, how they are settling down and doing businesses, they're not so sad. They're about how Kenyans work so hard and how they're well placed in other countries. Saudi Arabia becomes the only country so far that is depicted as killing Kenyans. Kenyans are scared of going there. I don't think that is the way our relations with Saudi Arabia should be. We should be a friendly nation with another friendly nation. I know Kenyans are looking for jobs all over the world. Saudi Arabia offers the best opportunities because opportunities are so many, but who wants to go there now after the stories we hear? So the report is too good for what we hear or read. It's extremely too good. At least there should have been a case or two of those kind of violence. What happened? Who killed? Were those people arrested? What did the country of Saudi Arabia do to the perpetrators of violence? I needed to see a section on violence against Kenyans, not a rosy report. Are you telling me that the social media and the mainstream media are telling a lie? That they are creating these stories? Why didn't you follow what we read so that we are satisfied with the report? I think the report falls short, very, very short of what we have heard and seen. I would have seen a better report or a well-balanced reporting where it's not just too rosy. Tell us the bad sides of Saudi Arabia. And then that is what we are here for. The bad side is what we want to hear. How many have been killed? How many came back running? How many are enslaved? How many are violated against? What is happening to our Kenyans? Are they safe? You talked to the ambassadors, and you even praised the ambassador as a good man. That's fine. But did he also tell you how many are killed? How many have sneaked in there illegally? So just what Dr. Nyikal is also talking about, the statistics. We need statistics to back our argument and to come up with better laws. Statistics normally speak volumes. If we could have been told that between this year and that year, so many got jobs in Saudi Arabia. Between this year and that year, a lot of them returned because they retired or because they were unhappy with the conditions under which they were working. How many women were our Kenyans who are abroad, especially who are in Saudi Arabia? We are not so worried about other countries because we have not heard more about from those countries. If anything, the worst that can happen, or rather the next worst one is South Africa, where there's xenophobia. So those are there. But Saudi Arabia stands tall in terms of violence against humanity. So I think when we say we don't support this report, it's because we fail to get what we know or what we've been told before. You went to tell us how we should take more Kenyans to Saudi Arabia, but you did not tell us how safe they are. That is the biggest worry for me, and that's why I will not support this report until some of those questions are answered. Thank you. I don't support this report.
Very well. I'm sure even the committee members are here and listen to the expectations of the members on the reports, including the Honorable Omboko Milemba, who was also traveled to do the investigation among us other members. I can see other 4 members, Honorable Hali Wario, Ibrahim, Adan, that was the delegation secretary. The member for Baringo. And members, I have 11 requests for members who want to speak to this.
Thank you,
You
Madam.
may choose not to repeat what other members have said.
Yeah, I'll try not to. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I am one of those persons or members of this House who is going to also oppose this report, Madam Speaker. And I'm sorry to the committee members who have really taken a lot of time to make this report. And the only reason, Madam Speaker, is that we don't want to negate their efforts, but to speak the truth to this matter. Madam Speaker, I was also worried as a country if we can still have 55,000 people in Saudi Arabia, despite the torturing, the killings, the all bad things we hear about that place, then it means our country needs to do more to secure jobs for our people. Because despite the fact that there's a lot of evil done to them in Saudi Arabia, they still move to there, either legally or illegally. And so for that reason, Madam Speaker, I want to say this. We would want this report to give us some of the facts like, are the rights of the people of Kenya in Saudi Arabia in terms of giving birth given to them or not? We want to hear that. Are they given the right to give birth without actually maybe being curtailed or done anything wrong? And if they get the right to give birth, do they get paternity and maternity leaves like we do here? We want to hear such reports. The other question is, how is their health rights in that country? And if they give birth to children, do they go to school? Those are some of the things we want to hear. How is the religious rights of our people in that country? Because we can't actually paint the report to look good while we know so much and we have heard so much about that country. In fact, like myself, if today I'm told I'm going for a trip there, only a trip can scare me. But staying there for a job is another issue. So, Madam Speaker, to me, I think this report would also have told us, since the immigration of our people to Saudi Arabia, how many deaths so far have we had? Cannot be told by Saudi Arabia government, but what is our embassy doing? Do they keep such reports? Because we cannot assume that globalization is not real. In the contemporary society, traveling, either illegally or legally, people do go. And we cannot stop Kenyans going there, whether it's illegal or not. But this House, through a right report from this committee, would have formulated some legislative laws that can mandate the Ministry of Affairs to put the right regulations and do some lobby. Because I think what is lacking, Madam Speaker, is the personal relations, is the governmental relations between our government and the kingdom. At least they should lobby to talk about these issues. They might have done it, but they need to go further and talk. Because if we are hearing from the member who has just spoken, that 2 weeks ago, we had another person from Kenya who was tortured in Saudi Arabia. And even, I believe, that person was tortured even after the report was made. It is unacceptable, Madam Speaker, when we see our people being tortured, and still we can actually give some cheers to Saudi Arabia, despite the fact that we can't do much to correct the regulations, the laws, and the rules in that country. It is only important that we negotiate with them for a fair treatment of our people in that country. Madam Speaker, when I speak like that, I really pity especially women. And you know, Madam Speaker, as much as the torturing could be on both genders, I believe it is worst for women of Kenya in that country. Now that you understand the biasness on that gender, culturally, and even in some instances, religiously, it is important to actually, like what the other members said, to have a number of these people who are there, especially women, not being biased on men, to get the real stories of what they undergo while in that country. Madam Speaker, women could be there, as the member next to me is saying, but unfortunately, when we go there as a house, not in a private place to interview them, as a woman can be humiliated to express exactly what they undergo. We need some expertise to go and find in a private manner, such that they can get the real issues that these women undergo while they are doing their labor work, and especially the house helps. The house helps because many of the people who are women who are unskilled, they go for house help work. And Madam Speaker, from what I've heard sometimes back, it is very unfortunate, it is uncalled for, it is inhuman, it is not dignifying a human being in the contemporary world. So unfortunate, and we want to call for even our Muslim brethren who are in our country, because that country is a Muslim kingdom, to actually persuade their brethren so that they can be able to bring humanity and handle our people with humanity, because they deserve to be handled that way, Madam Speaker. It's so, for me, Madam Speaker, I'm afraid I've never stood in this house and opposed anything. But for the first time in record, I'm sorry to this committee, I'm boldly opposing this report, and it is only important that they give us another report that it depicts the expectations and it reflects what we see and hear about our people in Saudi Arabia without giving Saudi Arabia.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika. Mimi nataka nianze kwa kuwapongeza wanakamati kwa kazi walofanya, lakini nataka nisimame kwa misimamo ya kupinga ripoti hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, ukweli ni kwamba Waswahili wasema mficha uchi hazai. Na ndugu zetu wamepewa kazi hii. Sababu kubwa ni mateso ambao wamekuwa Wakenya wakiyapata kutokana na nchi hii. Mheshimiwa Spika, nikiwauliza waheshimiwa kwa nini hawakupelekwa nchi nyingine, na ili hali kuna Wakenya katika nchi nyingine wanafanya kazi, wamepelekwa Saudi Arabia kwenda kuchunguza mambo fulani, hususa yale yanayojiri Wakenya wanavouliwa, wanavokufa kwa njia zisizoeleweka. Mheshimiwa Spika, Mheshimiwa Spika, ni masikitiko makubwa sana kuona ya kwamba nchi yetu yajiendeleza ama yaendeshwa bila ya utaratibu. Leo hii tuambiwa kuna Wakenya wanaenda kule kwa njia ambazo hazieleweki. Lakini Mheshimiwa Spika, Mkenya yule ambaye leo yarudi hapa akiletwa akiwa ni mzoga, ameuliwa na mwajiri wake kule, utapata kwamba ana mikataba kikamilifu, ana visa kikamilifu kwamba alienda kule kufanya kazi. Mheshimiwa Spika, kamati imetuelezea kwamba wamepata idadi ya Wakenya wanaofanya kazi kule ni takriban 50,055, Mheshimiwa Spika. Lakini Mheshimiwa Spika, nataka kusema ya kwamba idadi hii wakija katika stakabadhi za rekodi ya wizara ya wafanyikazi hapa Kenya, watakuwa hawajui na hawajielewi. Mili, time hakuna chambo yako.
Honorable Millie Odhiambo, your intervention.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With due respect to the member that is speaking and is saying very important things, Madam Speaker, I can see this clock on the right is saying time is up. The clock on the left is saying that we still have 5 minutes. Would I be in order to request Madam Speaker to use her discretion and standing order number 1 to declare the clock on the left, the right one, so that the honorable member can have opportunity to finish what he's saying. Otherwise, he may not finish. But Madam Speaker, given also that I will not be here next week, may I just declare that I oppose this report?
Now this matter has been brought up. This is a house of rules and regulations. Will you please inform whoever it is to correct these two It's very bad for the clocks not to be the right day time. It doesn't matter. You see, they're wrong.
There are many. Point taken. Point taken. Point taken. It's
Mheshimiwa
not
Speaker.
about rules. It's about the clock. It depends on the one you're using, but you can still confirm from where I am, given the time, I know at what point. So but I agree.
Mheshimiwa
with
Speaker,
you.
masaa
Yes,
inaenda.
carry on.
Mheshimiwa Spika, kama nilivyosema ni masikitiko makubwa Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu nilitarajia kamati hii kuchukua majina ya wale wote walioathirika walioletwa hapa wakiwa